Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is a coyote starrk harem. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Whisper Yoyo and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 Betrayal, Wave Mission. The mission to Wave wasn't as simple as Team 7 were led to believe. Not even close. Where they expected bandits to jump the old man they were protecting, they all got missing Nin instead. Two of them, the demon brothers, were easily dispatched by Kakashi Hatake while Naruto only suffered a cut on his hand that was quickly taken care of. The group decided to continue on with the mission instead of turning back once Tazuna told them everything, and I mean everything. They all had their reasons for wanting to continue on, Naruto to protect the people of Wave from Gato, Sasuke to gain strength to kill his brother, Sakura because Sasuke stayed, and Kakashi for a secret order given to him. They all proceeded till they were confronted by Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist, and fought him. They got the better of the man and he was taken away by a hunter Nin, though Kakashi doubted that Nin was after a bounty of any kind. After about a week or so, Team 7 minus Naruto were at the bridge to defend Tazuna from Zabuza's and that hunter Nin's attack. After a while of fighting, Naruto showed up after dealing with some thugs at Tsunami's house and helped out Sasuke, much to the Uchiha's disdain. They held the hunter off and eventually, after Sasuke was used as a human pincushion, Naruto had used the power of the Kyuubi within him to defeat the hunter Nin. As this was going on, Kakashi saw this as the perfect opportunity to execute his secret mission. While Naruto was distracted with who the hunter Nin was after her mask broke, Kakashi used that time to throw a kunai with an explosive tag and it embedded right into the back of Naruto's skull, exploding only a few seconds later. The explosion also engulfed Haku as well and the two died in a ball of fire that rocked the entire bridge. The last thing they both saw before said explosion took their lives was the smug look on Kakashi's face as he took their lives from them. Zabuza saw the whole thing and in his rage, tried to take Kakashi's head off, but the Jounin dodged the swordsman's wild attack and suffered for it. Kakashi used his dogs to trap Zabuza and then shoved his lightning blade into the man's chest. When he did so, Kakashi whispered to the man, "You can see your whore and that demon in hell, you son of a bitch." Zabuza was seething with rage at those words and tried with the last of his strength to do something. Anything. But he was fading fast and had no chance of retaliation, or even revenge for losing the one person in this world he cared for. After Zabuza was killed, Gato and his men came to attack only to find that the whole town was there and ready to fight to the death for their home. Kakashi took advantage of the ensuing chaos, and got Sasuke off of the bridge and to safety. He knew that a big reward would be tremendous when he returned from a successful mission from the civilian and shinobi councils. Now that the demon was dead, the leaf would prosper now and forever. "I avenge you, sensei," Kakashi said to himself as he watched the battle take place, feigning chakra exhaustion to sell it all. The battle on the bridge was bloody and fierce with many of the citizens dying at the hands of Gato's men, but the tide changed when Inari was able to fire an arrow and embed it right between the business tycoon's eyes, killing him instantly. The thugs, seeing that their meal ticket was pretty much gone now, and the people of Wave got their second wind now, they retreated and left Wave forever. Once the fighting ended, the people started to celebrate their victory, but Inari was the first to notice the absence of a certain blonde that made this all possible. When he asked Kakashi where Naruto was, the silver-haired Jounin told him that the demon lost control of his own power, and he had no choice but to kill him. It was a lie that Inari couldn't believe, nor could the people of Wave. The shock of this all caused the people to run the Konoha ninja out of their country forever, claiming that the blonde that saved their village was no demon at all. As Kakashi carried Sasuke on his back, Sakura had to ask her sensei just what happened. What did he mean when he said Naruto lost control, and why did he call Naruto a demon? She was told that Naruto was a demon but was never really given a proper reason as to why exactly. Her own parents would never tell her why she should hate Naruto, so she just didn't and simply found him to be himself, a knucklehead and unpredictable ninja. Kakashi explained to her that Naruto was the holder of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the exact same fox that killed hundreds of innocents 12 years ago. After his explanation, he expected Sakura to be overjoyed to hear that the demon was gone, and that Konoha was safe again, but instead, he got the opposite. Sakura yelled at him for assuming that Naruto was ever like that. Contrary to popular belief, Sakura never hated Naruto. She didn't love him either. She saw him as an annoying, hyperactive knucklehead that was very unpredictable, but she also saw him as a very good person with a very good heart. He may have been an annoyance to her, but she would see his annoyance as a breath of fresh air compared to what she would usually see from Sasuke. Ever since his clan was killed by his brother, Sakura's mother told her, well, more like forced her, to try and get together with the last Uchiha. She didn't really want to at first, and the constant ignoring and insulting from the emo teen was just pissing her off more and more with each passing day she was around him. This sudden attitude change in Sakura was entirely new to the one-eyed jounin. He thought that she would be all for this, but instead, she was actually angry that Naruto was killed. This could be very bad for the plans of the council if she suddenly grew a spine and decided to rat them all out to the Hokage. Kakashi would have to silence her, even though he knew her mother, Mabuki, would be furious at this. Without wanting to take the risk, Kakashi quickly got behind Sakura and snapped her neck like a twig. The last thing she had heard from her apparent sensei were the words, "You should have hated the demon like the rest of us. Now join him yourself." This image would stay in her mind until the very life in her body faded away, and she would join her wrongly killed teammate in the afterlife. If she ever did see him there, she would only say 2 words to him: "I'm sorry. Unknown location." Now that was the final strike. A voice boomed within the large room. "I've had just about enough of those humans, and their obsession with power. If they want to see real power, then I'll show them firsthand." Before the figure could do anything, another figure grabbed at his shoulder gently and spoke to him in a calm tone. "Calm yourself, brother. As much as I agree with you in this matter, this is not the way." The voice seemed to have the intended effect on his brother, as the first figure sighed in frustration and relented. "Now then. We have 4 souls that have been wronged in many ways by many people, and as much as I would love to send them back to their world to right the wrongs of those who have done them injustice, I am not allowed to do so." "What?" the second figure shouted out in anger and disgust. "Why not?" The first figure took his hand off his brother's shoulder and walked away for a bit, his brother following him. They walked for a short while before standing in front of another figure with a skull for a face and wearing a dark cloak. "Brother." The first figure started towards the third. "I take it that you already have them now?" "Yes, brother." The third figure started, only to sigh in a defeated tone. "Unfortunately, one of them, Zabuza Momochi, has made many sins and done many evils in the world. I cannot let him be a part of your plan." "I'm sorry, brother." "It is all right, Shinigami," the first said to the now named Shinigami and gave another sigh. "Yami." The second figure, now named Yami, stepped forward. "Yes, brother? Zabuza Momochi may have done many terrible things and wouldn't be seen as a soul worth forgiveness, but allow his soul to suffer as least as possible." "Understood?" Yami hesitantly nodded to his brother. "I will try." The first figure nodded to Yami and continued. "In time, they will be needed again, though I sense another grave soul will be betrayed soon after." The figure sighed as he could see what was going on right at this moment, and the sight made him sad indeed. Konoha. It had been more than a few days ever since the wave mission went south for Team 7. When news broke upon Kakashi's return, the entirety of Konoha, aside from a few, were up in arms in celebration for the demon brat's death. They all threw a celebration for the death of the demon, and marked this day as a holiday for all of Konoha. Of course the Hokage was furious at this and personally broke up the entire thing in his own rage. Hiruzen also wanted every single detail from Kakashi about what happened and how the mission went south so damn fast that 2 of his genin were now dead. Kakashi, keeping to the lie and now adding a new one to it involving Sakura, had explained that Naruto had lost control of the demon inside of him, and went on a killing spree. He killed the hunter Nin and Zabuza before killing Sakura as well, and that the only way to stop him was to kill him with a lightning blade through his chest. It would be a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. At least for the rest of this meeting, that is. Hiruzen wasn't buying it but dismissed the Jounin and disbanded Team 7 for now. Mabuki Haruna wasn't faring too well with the news of her daughter's death at the hands of that demon. She would wish for her daughter to marry the Uchiha for his wealth and power to make their family stronger. But now that she was gone, that plan was out the window. You would think a mother being told of her daughter's death would be broken up by all of this. But not Mabuki. She would mourn her daughter for a short while before coming up with another plan to attain the Uchiha wealth for herself. Mother of the year right here. But the one that took it all the hardest was Hinata Hyuga. Her not-so-secret crush on the blonde was known by everyone, and it came as no surprise when she was broken up by news of his death. She wanted so badly to be with him, and now he was gone before she could ever tell him her real feelings toward him. To her, the one light in her bleak and miserable life had been extinguished, and she was nothing more than a broken shell of what she formerly was before. Hayashi and the Hyuga elders saw this as a weakness and wanted to purge that weakness from her completely. The training she had received was nothing short of brutal beatings and torture sessions. Every day she would be put through spars with her father, and then her little sister in the hopes of breaking her crush and everything else he stood for in her heart. The elders were considering giving her the caged bird seal, but Hayashi decided against it in the hopes that she would change in time. The branch family saw this as their opportunity to prove that they were strong and had set up a match between Niji and Hinata. The rules were simple. If Niji wins, then the branch family would have more say on Hyuga affairs. If Hinata wins, then that wouldn't happen, and she would be ordered to kill Niji. The same order would come from Niji should he win as well. The fight went as expected, with Niji not even bothering to hold back as he was relentless with how he beat Hinata into the ground, even after she forfeited earlier on. No one bothered to help Hinata in any way, shape, or form. They all watched her with disdain and hatred for how weak she was and how her love for the demon was a cancer that would infect the Hyuga family. Without another moment's hesitation, Hayashi stopped Niji's onslaught and looked down to his eldest daughter's broken and battered form in pure disappointment. "You should be ashamed of your weakness," Hayashi said to her, as she shed a tear at his words and the looks of those she would have called family. "But never had I had high hopes for you, Hinata. But now, the future of the Hyuga now goes to your sister. At the sound of that, Hanabi walked over to her older sister's down form with a smug smirk on her face. "Enjoy the afterlife, my failure of a daughter." And with that, Hayashi stuck her with a juke and strike straight to her heart, killing her almost instantly. The last thing that Hinata could possibly whisper out at that moment was one word: Naruto-kun. And that was the day that Hinata Hyuga was betrayed by her own family. Unknown location again. The first figure sighed as Shinigami had just received a new soul that was indeed betrayed just as his brother had foretold. He looked to him, and could see the sadness within those pure white eyes. That was the last straw, brothers. The figure told both Yami and Shinigami as the soul of Hinata Hyuga came to them as well. "Now, we must do what must be done." Both Yami and Shinigami nodded as they prepared the ritual. It would take them a while now, but once they were done, these four would bring about change to the world of shinobi. They would be the spark to set about a fire to burn away the corruption of the old world, and from those ashes, rise anew like the great phoenix of old. The boy who has lived in fear for his own life as the Kyuubi jailer, the girl branded a monster for her bloodline by her own people, the girl forced into things by an uncaring mother that never cared for her, and a girl who was broken completely by her own clan. These four would bring about that change. They just first needed to live in a different world first. Chapter 2, Visions. Okay. After much debating and seeing just what some of the reviews say, I've finally figured out which Espada each of the four will be. Just don't be surprised if some of them are a bit different than the canon show. Las Noches. Right now, there was a meeting going on pertaining to the plan that a certain, overzealous Rouge Soul Reaper thought up to ascend to godhood in a sense. Among those present were the Espada, the 10 most powerful hollows in Hueco Mundo. They were all sitting around a long table, while their leader sat at the very edge of said table. The brown-haired, former Soul Reaper had been explaining how the Winter War was going to go, and what specifically would the Soul Reapers do to prepare for it all. For the most part, everyone in the room was listening to his words, except for one in particular. This one particular Espada was of course the laziest Espada of them all. The first Espada, Coyote Stark. He sat at the table like his fellow Espada, yes, but he was mainly daydreaming and not paying attention to what Aizen was talking about in the slightest. He had let his shaggy brown hair cover his eyes as to not gather the attention of Aizen, though he suspected the man probably knew Stark wasn't paying attention and just didn't care. It was hard to tell with that man, but he continued on like before regardless. Stark wasn't paying attention because recently he's been having these odd dreams every time he slept. He would dream of this short kid with spiky blonde hair and bright blue eyes filled with life. He wore this hideous orange jumpsuit and had whisker marks on his cheeks. The kid had the biggest grin on his face, maybe even bigger than whenever Grimmjow or Neutro would get into a fight, but his was a kind and genuine one. It was warm and full of happiness, but something was very wrong about that smile. It seemed forced. Not a real smile, just something tacked on to fool people it seemed. This confused Stark to his very core as he couldn't understand it at all. Why was this kid forcing a smile on his face if it wasn't real, and just who was he anyway? Having similar thoughts as well was the third Espada, Tia Harabel. She was indeed loyal to Aizen, nearly the most loyal, but something had been bothering her as well for some time now. For a little while now, roughly about a week or two, she's been getting constant flashes of an ocean and a little girl standing within it in front of her. The girl had beautiful lavender hair, and these pale eyes that screamed loneliness. The large coat on her must have been hiding scars of some kind if she was wearing it so casually, but it was the look on her face that was really scary to the third Espada. She was crying, but not tears. Blood. This girl was crying tears of blood from those pale eyes, and she was doing it with a smile on her face, almost like she was okay with the pain. Okay with whatever was hurting her. and okay to let the pain continue and put up a smile either way. Tia had never seen anything like this girl before, and it was scaring her. Another of the Espada that weren't really paying attention as well was, surprisingly, the fourth Espada, Ulquiorra Cipher. She wasn't really what you'd call drifter per se, but for a while now she has been having flashes of someone she has never seen before. A girl with long, pink hair and green eyes standing right in front of her near a sakura tree. The girl wore a red shirt with short sleeves and had a smile on her face. Ulquiorra couldn't explain it, but for some reason she just felt that the smile on the girl's face was fake. Something to hide her despair of some kind. If there was one thing Ulquiorra was good at, it was sensing when a person's despair was clearly trying to be hidden. Why this girl was trying to do so was a mystery, but one thing was for certain, Ulquiorra could feel her pain. Almost like they were connected somehow. It was something that was making the usually stoic and somber Arrancar freeze up and want to back away from the girl, yet something kept drawing her back in. It was made all the worse once the sakura tree burst into flames and consumed the still smiling girl. The last Espada, or at least former Espada, wasn't present at this meeting. Instead, she was out in the deserts of Hueco Mundo along with her brothers, Dando Chaka and Pesh, sitting out on a sand dune. She may have had the body of a child, but for some reason, she just knew that she was not one. At least she thought so. These flashes in her mind kept her from sleeping sometimes. Flashes of a teenage girl with long, dark hair and brown eyes. Right now, while her brothers slept, the girl known as Nell sat on the sand dune looking up at the sky, wondering just what that teenager was to her. Why had she been having these flashes for a little more than a week now, and just who was she? Nell didn't know that answer and even knew her brothers wouldn't have a distinct answer for her either, but something just drew her to that teen, something natural and completely familiar to her. What was it? Just what could it be? Who was the girl and why was she standing within a terrible snowstorm? After the meeting, Aizen dismissed them all and watched them leave. They were getting close to the day they invade, and yet he could tell a few of his Espada were starting to question this whole plan. To Aizen, he saw this as a pity. He hadn't expected some of them to attain human emotions in such a short time. Because of that, they were to be expendable now. Especially his first, third and surprisingly enough his fourth Espada. They had been acting strange lately. Unresponsive at times, and even completely out of it at times, like their minds are elsewhere. Something Aizen did not like at all. Stark. As Stark was walking back to his chambers after the meeting was over, he still couldn't help but remember the blonde kid he kept seeing. It was really starting to give him a headache, and the yelling from Lilynette wasn't helping either. The small child may have been his other half, and a very loud, red-headed other half to boot, but man, to Stark can she be annoying sometimes. Stark! Are you even listening to me? She yelled at him as they continued to walk down the hall to his room. Kinda hard not to hear you, Lilynette. But that doesn't mean I'm listening. He retorted to her, and received a kick to his backside for it. What the hell? Lilynette laughed at him, and then started to run away once he started chasing her. That was for ignoring me, you jerk, she yelled out to him as she ran through corridors to avoid him. As Lilynette was running away from Stark, she rounded a corner and crashed into a certain blue-haired fraction that wasn't all too pleased about it. Hey, the new girl yelled out as she grabbed Lilynette by the hair and lifted her up with ease, anger clearly in her voice and eyes. Kid, you just made a huge-ass mistake. Put me down, you weird-eyed dear. Lilynette struggled as best as she could under the girl's grip, but couldn't really break it whatsoever. Apache, what are you doing? Another girl with olive-colored hair and her mouth covered by her sleeve asked the now-named Apache with a sneer to her voice. About to teach this brat a lesson for running into me. That's what I'm. Apache didn't really get to finish as she felt a hand on her head. She stopped and turned to see who would do such a thing to her so she could yell at them, only to stop dead in her tracks at seeing the Primera Espada. Stark looked at her with an impassive look before raising her off of the ground with little to no effort at all to look her in the eyes. Apache was nervous beyond all things as this man could kill her with just the thought if he wanted to. I'd appreciate it if you dropped Lilynette, please. He said to her in a calm manner that held boredom in its tone. Apache gritted her teeth while both Mila Rose and Sunday through Sunday got into their stance. They may not be a unit per se, but they wouldn't let someone attack the other if they could prevent it. Stark just looked at them with an impassive stare, and was somewhat amused that the three thought they could take him on. The thought was enough to make him laugh, but he held off on that once he saw someone else coming towards them all. That's enough, girls. The smooth and calm voice of one Tia Harabel cut through the tension and stood in between her fraction and the Primera. You girls wouldn't even lay so much as a scratch on him, let alone hurt him. Now head back to our chambers and prepare for the invasion. Yes, Master Harabel. The Tres Biastia answered her as they lowered their guards and left. Apache turned her head to give one last sneer to the now grinning Lilith. Tia noticed this and shot the girl a glare of her own that caused said girl to hide behind Stark. You should mind what you do and who you do it to, girl. You don't have to worry about her, Tia. Stark spoke up to her, getting her attention. Tia turned her harsh gaze from the still shaken Fraction to the Espada and met him eye to eye for the very first time. And that was when both Espadas stooped and stared into each other's eyes longingly. Time seemed to have stopped as they looked at one another's eyes and felt something familiar to it. Something nostalgic about them. Something that made them both feel some kind of warmth where their hearts should be. Stark could feel that blonde-haired kid within his dreams and flashes, and he could see the boy smiling at him with a real smile this time. Then flashes of the boy's life played out in front of the Espada. The pain he suffered at the hands of others. The abuse he went through on a daily basis. Stark didn't know what he was seeing, but he hated every single second of it. That was the reason for the fake smile the boy had on him in those visions. He was trying desperately to be accepted and acknowledged by these people. The final flash was of the boy's death at the hands of a masked man with silver, gravity-defying hair. The look on the boy's face held one of betrayal and shock at what that man did to him. Stark didn't know why, but he suddenly wanted that man dead. Worse than dead, he wanted him to suffer and beg for mercy only to have it ripped from him in the most brutal of ways. His blue spirit energy started to seep out of him at the sight of those people, and as he was doing it unintentionally, a red energy could also be seen within it. This made Lilith smile. Tia felt the girl with the pupilless eyes return to her mind and saw that she was no longer feeling any pain. The blood from her eyes had faded away with the water, and Tia could see these images of the girl's life playing out in front of her. The abuse the girl went through by people who looked exactly like her. The same eyes and facial features were present, and everything. Tia could only assume that these people were somehow related to the girl from before. Her assumption was right as she saw the group of them hurting the girl in near torturous ways. The pain the girl was feeling was the reason for the bloody tears, and yet the worst was yet to come as a man talked down on her, calling her a failure of a daughter and delivering the final strike that ended the girl's life. Tia saw this and grew enraged at these people. She wanted to tear them all apart and watch as they all drown in a sea of their own tainted blood. Her yellow spirit energy started to leak from her body, and within it was a faint, purple color to it. Okiara, the fourth Espada, was preparing for her own mission: get the healer girl and bring her back to Las Noches. Simple, right? Well, it would have been if said Espada wasn't still focused on that pink-haired girl form her mind. Because of that, she accidentally opened a garganta out in the sands of Hueco Mundo instead of the Damai like she was supposed to. With an annoyed sigh, Okiara prepared to open another garganta to head to her exact location, only to be stopped at the presence of another standing behind her. She turned expecting a battle of some kind, but she only saw a child with aquamarine hair and a cracked mask on her head instead. Okiara looked at the girl, uninterested in her whatsoever, until she looked into her eyes and saw the image of that pink-haired girl again. She gasped at this and had no idea what this meant. Why? Why was she being tormented by this girl? Why was she in her mind now of all times right before Aizen-sama's grand plan? She needed to focus on her purpose at life. To please her leader and see to it that she does whatever he told her to do, and that thought process enraged her. She didn't know why, but the thought of doing whatever someone of higher authority and a superiority complex simply enraged her. Suddenly, visions of another pink-haired woman started to flash within her mind, and this woman was forcing the pink-haired girl to do things she didn't want to do. Okiara could feel her pain and despair in the visions as they continued to play out. The girl trying to gain the woman's acceptance and love, the woman rejecting it and forcing her to continue doing things she didn't want to do. The abuse the girl went through verbally by the woman who Okiara could only assume was the girl's mother, and then something that made no sense to the Espada at all. The girl being brought to the woman, only she was now a lifeless corpse. Her neck snapped like it was nothing at all, and the woman barely even caring in the slightest. This enraged Okiara as she clenched her teeth and was releasing a torrent of spirit energy at the woman's lack of interest in her own daughter's death. The black-teal spirit energy had a twinge of pink within it. As Okiara was processing all of this information, Nell was having a similar flash of visions herself. That dark-haired girl from before was there within the snowstorm once more, but this time she was surrounded by fire and ice and death. Nell saw the girl being happy with, who she could only perceive as, the girl's mother and father. Everything was perfect until one day the girl showed her mother that she could manipulate water into ice. That was when the father killed the mother and girl killed her father. She was chased by other people calling for her blood to run the snow-covered streets. That was when she ran into a man with bandages covering his face, and everything changed for her. Her purpose in life to be this man's tool, her desire to protect her precious people, and meeting a blonde-haired boy that taught her that she was much more than a tool. Nell saw that the girl was happy about her meeting with the blonde, but that all changed when she saw another masked man kill the blonde along with herself, and the man she made herself a tool for. This enraged the little former Espada to the point that her own spirit energy swirled along with Ulquiorra's. Her own pink spirit energy having an icy blue color to it. Unknown location. It is time, my brothers. The first figure spoke to Yami and Shinigami. Yes, brother/yes, brother. Both of them spoke to their brother, as they all felt the energies from the other world. For years now, all three brothers had watched as the world of humans had fallen far from grace and was consumed by a lust for power and control by any means necessary. It was sickening to them all the same. Whether it was the Shinigami or Yami himself, they wanted to go down there and show the humans of the world that their drive to steal power in order to subjugate others has only one possible outcome: death. But their brother, the one with the true final say, told them of why they can't do that. He convinced them that these four will bring about order and true peace to the world, even if they had to make the world lose half of its population to do so. Be ready, my brothers. The first figure started as he made his way towards a large door that was sealed shut. The door was taller than the three and was made out of a black, cast iron metal that had the kanji for seal etched into the center of it. The kanji started to fill up with the energies of the four, and the first figure spoke of each color filing in. Red. The top part of the kanji was red, the boy of wolves and foxes. Living his life, aware of the lie and not doing anything about it. Next was purple, coming off of the red into the halfway point of the kanji. Purple. The girl of the sea and lions, desperately trying to change a clan that is too far gone to change. After that was pink, reaching down from the purple. Pink. The girl of despair and strength, trying to live for the love she will never receive. Last was the icy blue, filling out the kanji's last parts. And finally blue. The girl seeking a purpose for her own existence. The kanji started to glow and shine among the door, causing it to crack open. The kanji symbol disappeared and the four colors stretched to the four corners of the door. Red at the top left. Purple at the top right. Pink at the bottom left. And blue at the bottom right. The cast iron door opened up slowly and both Yami and Shinigami stood next to their brother in awe of his creations. They both looked at him before looking back to what was behind the door and marveled at them. These, the first figure spoke in a tone that held authority yet fairness in it. Will help them change the way the world is. Forever. Chapter 3, Return. Where we left off, everything fell apart for Aizen and his army fast. First off, Ulquiorra didn't get to the girl in time, thus allowing for Ichigo and his friends to stay in the fake Karakura town to help the Soul Reapers. Next up, both Stark and Tia hadn't shown up with the invasion force, thus cutting their Espada that were invading down to just one, Barragan. This meant that only Lower Arrancar had shown up to fight and one Espada along with Jin, Kan-Aim, and of course Aizen, all of them against the captains, lieutenants, vizards, Kisuke and Yorichi, and Ichigo along with his friends. Lastly, one of the former Espada had killed two Arrancar long before the invasion that Aizen needed, those two being Wonderwise, his own creation to stop Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, and Huler, another creation of his that can bring about Minos Grandes. It was a very sound and swift defeat for the former Soul Reaper captain, as even the Hogyoku had failed him in giving him the power to transcend that of Soul Reapers and Hollows. It was Ichigo who delivered the killing blow to the Rouge, and the Hogyoku was now back in the hands of its original creator, Kisuke Urahara, who sealed it away forever. It was a glorious day for the Soul Society as they later on went to the Hollow stronghold of Las Noches and destroyed any and everything in their way, including our four heroes. Though something was off about that victory, as those four Arrancar didn't fight back. Actually, they didn't fight at all. They were just sitting together in a circle with their heads down, and mumbling something about other people and, for some odd reason or another, ninjas. Ninjas? What was that all about? That is what the Soul Reapers assigned to the area the four were in were thinking before destroying them along with the building as well. After that day, the hierarchy of the Hollows had crumbled as no Hollow was able to salvage the chaos of Hueco Mundo. As for our four heroes, well, they were heading to a much better place now. Unknown location. Finally, the figure spoke as the room that was sealed away glowed heavily with the four colors of our heroes. The Shinigami and Yami stood by their brother, and watched as the objects within the room began to glow their respective colors. Within this room, four weapons were constructed and forged by the very heavens and hell itself. These weapons were made specifically for our heroes as they would need them to change their world for the better. The first to glow and change were a pair of dual katanas forged from the very fires of hell. They glowed an intense red color. One of the blades was a pure red color while the other had a blue shine to it. They both had black handles and a standard pommel that was white, but the unique thing about the both of them was what was written on the blades themselves. On the red one, there was a pure black kanji for fox on it, and the blue one had a pure red kanji for wolf. Both blades were laid next to each other, as the red glow intensified. The next one was a single-sided broadsword glowing a purple hue, and forged using the lightest materials in all of heaven. It was around only 3.5 feet, handle included. The sharp edge of the blade had a fine and light purple finish to it, while the blunt end, despite having a jagged razor-sharp edges to it, was a clear metal that looked like it was flowing, like water. The handle was attached to itself, giving it a rapier look to it. There were markings written on the handle that read family and truth on it, and there was a blue kanji on both sides of the blade. On for shark, and the other for lion. The purple glow was intensifying. The third weapon was a spear with a blue glow to it, and it was forged using the coldest materials found in Hell's lowest circle. The spear stood at around 6 feet, with a pole that was entirely made of white metal and a blade composed entirely of ice. All around the pole were what seemed like blue seals. The seals swirled around the pole from the very top of near the blade, to the very bottom. The blade had dark blue kanji on each end of it, one for ice and the other for centaur. The blue glow was growing. Lastly were a pair of gloves with a pink glow to it, and these were forged from the very heart of a dying archangel. The gloves were completely black with teal metal plates on the flat ends of them. The palm ends had pink kanjis on them. The one for the right hand had the kanji for despair, while the one for the left hand had the kanji for strength on it. The pink glow was getting more and more intense by the second. "It is time." The figure spoke out as he and his brothers felt the coming presence of the four on their way here as we speak. In front of the three brothers, 4 souls started to form out of nothing and fell onto the ground one by one. The first a woman with blonde hair, followed by the only man of the group, then a pale woman, and finally an aquamarine-haired girl. They were all laying on the ground and all naked as the day they were born/formed. "Now then," the figure started as he looked towards his brothers. "Shinigami, Yami, you both know what to do." "Yes, brother/yes, brother," they both say as they leave the room in opposite directions. Hours later, as time ticks away, Stark could feel himself stirring from his sleep. He slowly opened his eyes and regretted it almost immediately as he was hit with bright lights coming from the ceiling. Stark put his arm out in front of his face to block the light and groaned, "Lilynette, turn off the damn light, would ya?" That was when he heard 2 things that caused him to grow alert. The first was that his voice had gotten a little higher pitched. The second was a voice he didn't recognize at all. "I am not Lilynette, child," the voice said in a calm and soothing tone. It caused Stark to quickly rise up and look around for that voice. He looked around and noticed that he was in a bedroom of some kind. The room was a pretty standard-sized room for a single person. It had a dark brown dresser next to the opposite side of the wall. The dresser had a set of white clothes laying on top of it, and had a pair of dual swords and black sheaths leaning next to the side of it. Above the dresser is a mirror, and Stark saw himself in it, only he looked vastly different. He was a little shorter than usual, probably by several inches to a foot now that he thought about it. His usual brown hair was now blonde with a few patches of brown in them. His usual blue-gray eyes were now a more vibrant sapphire color with a faint red shade in the center of the iris. And he had faint whisker marks on his cheeks. He also noticed that he wasn't wearing any of his clothes, and saw his muscular and lean body was still the same as always. "What the hell?" Stark said to himself as he approached the mirror with a slight hesitation. He reached out with a nervous hand and tapped the glass, shocked that it is real. "What the hell happened to me?" he said as he got closer to the mirror, carefully analyzing himself to ensure this wasn't one of Sale's deranged experiments on him. "I assure you, this is no trick, my child." That same, soothing voice spoke from behind Stark, causing him to turn around fast, ready for an attack. Instead, he saw what looked like a man sitting on the all-white bed. The man had pure white skin that was covered in a pale gray kimono. His hair was a beautiful and vibrant blue color with what seemed like some with substance moving freely within it, despite him not moving an inch. The hair was long and tied up in a ponytail that stopped at his lower back. His pale white eyes held compassion and his smile held kindness that Stark had never seen before, or will ever see again. The kimono had white flowers all around the bottom hem, and a blue sash tied comfortably around his waist. He also had some sort of patch on the left shoulder of his kimono that had a kanji on it. The kanji said all-seeing on it in a golden lettering. Who are you?" Stark shakily asked this man. The man kept his smile, and stood up. "I have many names, my child. The All-Father. Elohim. Jehovah. Yahweh. Elolam. The one above all, and many more, child. The man was standing in front of Stark, and the Espada realized that this man of many names was an easy 7 foot tall. But you may call me by my real name. Kami. Stark went wide-eyed at hearing this news. He was speaking to Kami himself and didn't even realize it. Stark may have been disrespectful to Aizen, but that was only because that man was just that, a man. This was Kami. One you show respect to no matter what. Stark bowed his head to the deity in front of him, hoping that he did not anger him with his bluntness, only to feel a warm hand on top of his head, ruffling his hair. You do not need to bow before me, child. Kami started while lifting Stark's head up by his chin. I do not want you to. All I want from you is your compassion and your heart. My compassion and my heart? Stark asked, confused at what Kami was asking him. Tell me something, child. Kami started again. Those visions that you have been receiving for some time now, do you remember them? Yes, Stark answered truthfully. But what does it mean, and why do I look like that boy now? Kami continued to smile at him and answered. Because long ago, before you became the Primera Espada and even before you met Aizen, there was a boy with a heart of gold and the will of many strong men. This boy, despite all of the hatred and malice he received from others, he still wore a smile on his face and tried to gain their approval by any means. Kami stopped and frowned at the next bit of information he was going to say. His life was ended by the one who should have protected and trained him properly. But that did not happen. Instead, he was betrayed by that very same man, and his pure soul was brought to me and my brothers. Stark listened intently and was starting to put some of the pieces together, but was still confused on one thing. Lord Kami, I don't understand what this has to do with me being here. Kami looked to him with a kind and warm smile. Because my child, that boy was you. Stark was shocked by that answer. He backed away a few steps and stood there with his hand atop of his blonde hair. He was that boy he had seen in those visions. But why couldn't he remember anything about himself or past self? I understand if you are having a hard time accepting this, child, but I assure you that you were once the boy in your visions. Kami spoke to him, sensing the distress and confusion within Stark. Your name back then was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the 4th Hokage and jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, or as you knew her from your current life. Kami motioned to the door and Stark looked to it. The door opened and in walked Lilith in the same attire she's always worn. Stark/Naruto looked relieved seeing his partner unharmed and still with that same annoying grin as always. Hey there, Stark. She started as she crossed her arms and then looked past him. So Kami, is it finally safe now? Yes. He answered her with a gentle smile gracing his features. Though, you will be retaining a few features of your current body along with your past self. I hope that will be fine for you, Kurama. Lilith/Kurama nodded and then looked right back to the eyes of her partner. It's finally time, Kit. Before Stark could even say anything or ask what she meant, she started to glow a red hue all around herself. Stark/Naruto stood there, mouth agape as he saw her transform within this red energy. She grew taller, about up to his chin. Her hair grew out past her shoulders and to her mid-back. She started to become developed in all the right places. But the strangest thing that happened to her was that she had 9 tails coming out of her lower back. Once the red energy disappeared, Stark/Naruto saw that she had changed completely. Her hollow helmet were gone, showing her round face and deep amber right eye. Her hair was a deep crimson, while her tails were a dark orange color with black tips. About the only thing that looked the same as when she was just a few seconds ago was her facial features, her lack of a left eye, and the hollow hole above her stomach. Only the hole had that same red energy going through it. Lilith? Stark/Naruto asked her as he noticed something that caused him to look away with a blush. You know you're naked, right? Lilith/Kurama noticed that she was indeed naked and didn't really give a normal reaction per se. She chuckled out as she struck a sexy pose, causing Stark/Naruto to blush a bit and turn away. Do you think I really care, Kit? I'm a demon kitsune, and the queen no less. So if anybody has a problem with me being nude like this, well then I suggest they step up and do something about it. Stark/Naruto shook his head at his companions still go with the flow attitude. Kami chuckled a bit at this as he saw how the former Espada was reacting to this all. After a few minutes, both Stark/Naruto and Lilith/Kurama got dressed in outfits similar to their original attire, well mainly just the color scheme. Stark/Naruto wore baggy white pants with both swords attached to his left side while also wearing a long-sleeved black shirt that had a whited-out number 1 on the chest where his original number was. He also had black sandals on. Lilith/Kurama wore a less revealing outfit unlike her previous lowly body. She wore a pair of tight black pants with white strips running along the sides of them, and she also had on a tight white shirt with a small opening on her chest to show some of her impressive cleavage. Alright then, Cammy started as he stood up from the bed and made his way towards the door. Let's go and see how your friends are doing. All three of them left the room and were walking down several hallways. To Stark/Naruto, this felt as if he was walking through Las Noches once again. The many corridors and long hallways were actually kind of a refreshing thing for him. As they walked along, he felt as if this whole thing with him being some kid named Naruto back then and a ninja just seemed so random. It would explain a few things, like why he was so powerful, or why Lilith has always been there by his side, but it doesn't explain why he was just now starting to get those visions. He didn't know how to react to this all, but one thing was for certain: if Cammy brought him here and told him what's what, then who was he to question? After a few minutes of walking, the three were now in a large room where three other individuals were sitting around. Stark/Naruto went a little wide-eyed when seeing these three individuals, as they all looked like people he had never seen before, yet their energy was all too clear to him. The first of them was a girl with long, lavender hair with a faint yellow at the tips of it. Her eyes were pale with a hint of green at the center of them. Her face looked completely different along with her skin, as she looked like a teenage girl now. She was wearing tight, black pants with white sandals and a high-collar lavender jacket over a black, fishnet shirt that covered her large breasts. She also had a broadsword hanging off her back. She was leaned up against the wall with her eyes closed. The next was another familiar girl. She had shoulder-length pink hair with a small patch of black on the left side, right above her eye. She wore a black shorts and knee-high combat sandals along with a sleeveless white shirt that hugged her body closely, but didn't constrict her breasts too well. On her hands were pink gloves with kanji on the both of them. She may have had her eyes closed as she sat down on the floor, but Stark/Naruto had a feeling that her eyes were a pure emerald green color of sorts. He didn't know why he thought that, but he just did for some reason. The last girl was definitely the most energetic of the three. She had waist-long black hair with an aquamarine shade along her roots and the tips. Her brown eyes looked all around the place in a fascinated motion, and she also had this red streak across her face. She was wearing white shorts, black sandals, a long-sleeved black shirt under a tied-up blue coat that didn't do much to hide her impressive bust. She also had a spear in hand, and was twirling it around while looking around the room. Stark/Naruto recognized their energy almost immediately. Halibel, Ulquiorra, Nilio. As he said their names, they turned to him and noticed his energy right then and there. They looked at his body and took notice of how different he looks, just like they did, and then noticed Cammy and Lilith/Kurama standing next to him. Before they could say anything though, Cammy spoke up. Now that all of you are here, I can start by telling you all why you're here. Cammy started. You four have been resurrected for the sole purpose of bringing peace and order to your former world. What do you mean, former world? Halibel/Hinata asked in an annoyed tone. Cammy smiled to her. Simple. The four of you were wronged in your previous lives in this world. As a result, you were all resurrected as these Espadas in another world. He stopped to let this information sink in for a moment, taking in the looks of shock and surprise in their eyes before continuing. This world has been changed by greed, corruption, evil, and other heinous acts by men who are desperate for power. I have saved you four because of how pure your souls were at the time, and how you all died in wrong ways. Died in wrong ways? Ulquiorra/Sakura spoke up in her usual stoic tone, only a little bit more higher pitched than before. What do you mean wrong ways? Simple. Cammy looked to both Nilio/Haku and Stark/Naruto. You two were killed after the battle and wave was over and done with, by the man that took away your master. He pointed to Nilio/Haku. And betrayed you as a teacher. He pointed to Stark/Naruto. Both started to have a flash of memories go through their minds in such a rush. Memories of a bridge and battling each other inside some sort of dome ice mirrors. They also started getting flashes of their past lives' memories. From Naruto's abusive life in a village that hates him for something he isn't, to Haku's father killing her mother, and her killing him. Their memories came back in full force while their current memories remained unchanged. Cammy looked to Ulquiorra/Sakura next. You were killed by the same teacher as him simply for being concerned for his well-being and questioning why your sensei killed him in general. Ulquiorra/Sakura's eyes went wide as she started to receive the memories of the day she died. How scared and terrified she was when he former asshole of a teacher snapped her neck like a twig just for showing her anger at him for killing her teammate. The rest of Sakura's memories played in her mind. The abuse her mother put her through, both physical and mental. That prick Uchiha that was so arrogant in his humiliating ways of rejecting her unwilling advances. The memories made her narrow her eyes and grit her teeth at how much she suffered because of it. Last but not least, Cammy looked to Halibel/Hinata, seeing the nervous anticipation in her eyes. and you, child, were killed by your very own family simply for loving someone who they all saw as a demon. Kami looked over to Stark/Naruto as he said that last part. Halabel/Hinata looked to Stark/Naruto, and the flood of memories of her crush on him came in full force. She blushed at those memories she had of him, and now had the confidence to confess to him. Though those good memories were replaced with the ones of her family beating her within an inch of her life before finally ending her, she gritted her teeth as she started to remember that day rather vividly now. How her so-called family called her weak and a waste of space. Now that those memories are back, you all will have to change the world by ridding it of its corruption and evil. Kami started while seeing the resolve in their eyes. The weapons you all have will help in cleansing the world of its impurity and greed. They are infused with both your Zanpakutos and your chakra, making them your ultimate weapons. Now then. Kami snapped his fingers and a door on the far side of the room opened up. The four saw this and saw that it led to a forest of some kind. Good luck, my children, I expect that you will need it. The four nodded, then bowed to Kami before looking to each other. They all nodded then, without a moment's hesitation, they all sonidoed out of this realm and back to their old home, ready to rid it of all its evil. Chapter 4 Taki. A few minutes later, the four landed in a clearing in a forest, all ready to fight if necessary. Yami and Shinigami had already informed the girls of what their goal for the world was already. Now that they were here, they looked around and couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia. Their memories of their past lives were clear to them while their current memories as Arrancar hadn't changed. It was an interesting dynamic to remember who they were beforehand and who they are now. Now wasn't the time for this though, as they felt something off in the distance that would need their intervention. Forest, daytime. In a forest not too far away from a small village, there was a man traveling on foot with a bag over his shoulder. The man was average height, with brown hair and light skin. He was wearing pale blue shorts and a white shirt under a black coat and plain sandals, and was heading towards a village that was only a mile or two down the path. The man stopped after a few minutes and leaned on one of the various trees along the road. "Oh man," the man said to himself as he got under a shady spot. He pulled a canteen of water out of his bag. Just had to travel at this time of the season. It is too hot out here. Before he could take a swig of the cold beverage, a kunai struck the canteen, knocking it out of his hands. The man was shocked at what he had just happened and looked around out of fear. He knew that bandits would be a problem in these parts, but never in his dreams did he think he would run into ninjas. The thought of it all was just terrifying to him. From what he has heard, there are some ninjas that were not the friendliest of people. Some of the worst were from Kumogakure, Iwagakure and Odogakure, but since the man was headed to Takigakure, IWA wasn't too much of a stretch right now. Sure enough, a group of 7 IWA ninjas wearing the standard Jounin outfits leapt out of the forest and circled around the man. The man started to sweat as he found himself surrounded by the ninja. Over the years, IWA had become quite unstable of a place to live in or even higher. They had never really gotten over their defeat at the hands of Konoha in the last war. More specifically, the Yellow Flash is who they hated the most. IWA has become a shell of what it used to be, as they have ninja that go out of their way to harass smaller village into submission, kidnapping children as ransom for their weak economy, and even teaming up with Orochimaru to eventually destroy Konoha and take its power from them. They were even in talks with Kumo and AIM. Back to the 7 surrounding the man. One of the ninja, the leader from the looks of him, stepped forward and smiled to the man in a sinister fashion. "Well, what do we have over here?" He started as he circled the man as he clutched his belongings tightly. A lone traveler, walking by himself in the forest. "Heh. Do you know whose territory this is?" The man shook his head vigorously, fearing that this might be the end of his life. "These parts belong to IWA. The leader continued with an overconfident smirk. "And very soon, Taki will bend to our rule, but for you I'll make a deal with." The man looked to the leader and swallowed the lump in his throat. What kind of deal? He stuttered out. "If you give us what's in the bag, we might just let you live." The leader spoke up, enticing a chuckle from the other 6 when he said might just let you live. The man looked around, wondering if he can just make a break for it, but that thought went out the window when the leader held a sword right at his throat. "I wouldn't try running messenger," the leader said with a scowl, getting a confused yet terrified look from the man. "A messenger?" The man spoke up in a panicked tone. "I'm not a messenger, I swear." "Too bad." The leader spoke up as one of the other ninja grabbed the man from behind and another ripped his bag from his grasp. The man struggled as hard as he could, but was powerless in the ninja's death grip. The one that had his bag started to dump its contents onto the ground, and what came out were masks. They were plain white masks with no distinguishable marks to them. The IWA ninjas looked to them and laughed, thinking that this was a messenger from Takigakure's allies, but instead really was just some traveler. Well, it seems you were indeed telling the truth. The leader started. I guess we can just let you go. The man sighed in relief, thinking that he was safe, at least until the sword in the leader's hand was back at his throat. But that would have made our entire time here a waste, and we all wouldn't want that. The man was at his wit's end. He thought that he would be safe after they found out that he wasn't a messenger or spy from Taki's allies, but now, this was the end for him. He closed his eyes as the IWA Jounin drew his arm back and was preparing to thrust it forward. The man waited for the end to come, but all he heard was what sounded like steel hitting steel. He opened his eyes and saw the impossible. A girl with pink hair, no older than 13 or 14 by the looks of her, stood in between the leader and the man. What was the impossible part was the fact that she had her hand out, and the tip of the blade was in her slender fingers. The IWA Nin looked on in shock as this girl just appeared out of thin air and stopped their leader's blade with her hand with the greatest of ease. Who the hell do you think you are? The leader shouted out in anger through gritted teeth. The girl just stood there with her eyes closed and head down. She wasn't paying the leader any attention whatsoever. Before the leader could shout at her again, she turned to the man and opened her eyes to him. Are you all right? She asked in a stoic voice that almost sounded void of emotions. The man simply nodded to her as he saw that the leader was getting angrier at this girl. I don't know who you are, or where you came from, but this is IWA business. The leader started with a hard glare aimed at the girl. If you value your miserable excuse of a life, then I suggest you leave before me and my men use you like a toy. The IWA Nin started to chuckle pervertedly. The girl didn't react to them and instead continued to look towards the man. This angered the ninjas as they were getting ready to attack her if she didn't move. Before they could though, a spear came crashing through the forest and spiked itself right into one of Nin's backs, impaling him to the ground. The rest of the IWA Nin froze for a moment before readying themselves for an attack. They brought out their kunai and tantos and readied themselves for an attack. The Nin holding the man let him go to also get himself prepared. Unfortunately for him, this time another girl with lavender hair with faint yellow tips appeared in front of him out of nowhere. That Nin went wide-eyed for a moment before the girl decapitated him with a broadsword. That was already 2 Nin down in the span of a few seconds. You bitches! The leader yelled out in rage as he finally was able to get his sword out of the pink-haired one's grasp. He went through hand seals at a quick fashion and yelled out, Earth style, Great Earth Spike. He formed many spikes out of the earth around him and fired them at the 2 girls. Both girls stood there, unfazed by the jutsu. The rest of the Nin and even the man thought they were crazy for standing there, but that soon changed to shock when a boy a little taller than them appeared out of thin air and stood in front of them. He drew a sword in his right hand and, with the greatest of ease, deflected each and every single spike like it was nothing. What? The leader shouted out. Before he could say anything else though, he heard his men getting slaughtered. He looked over to them and saw that they were all being impaled by yet another girl with long black hair that had a bit of aquamarine in it. She was holding the spear that was used to impale the first ninja and had made quick work of the rest. The leader stood in disbelief as his entire squad had been obliterated without much effort by these 4 strangers. Who in hell are you people? He yelled through gritted teeth. He had a feeling that he should make a hasty retreat and inform that Sasuke owed these new ninja. Okuyora. The boy spoke towards the pink-haired girl. You deal with him. She nodded and held out her right arm, pointing her finger towards him. The leader smirked, thinking that this girl was weak and pathetic. Yep, this guy was in for a surprise of a lifetime. Ha, he started. You think pointing at me is gonna do anything, girl? When I inform that Sasuke of this, you 4 will surely be hunted down and killed for this. And after that, we'll find and kill your families. The girls all narrowed their eyes at that. And then we'll burn your homes down. Right as he was about to make an escape, he saw the girl's fingers start to glow with this steel energy. He went wide-eyed as he could feel the killer intent coming off of them, and this attack. Desperate, he went through hand seals again but was much too slow. A large beam of teal energy fired at him, and hit him directly. The beam died down before it could reach the next village, but that didn't mean that many ninja on this day felt a new and dark energy had just made itself known to the elemental country. The boy started. Guess that's that. They all looked to the man and saw that he was shaking violently from that attack. It's okay. The girl with the spear spoke first with a kind smile on her face that did calm the man to an extent. We're not going to hurt you. She held out her hand to the man and he reluctantly took it. Once he stood up, he got a really good look at them all. Who are you 4? He asked them in wonder of the people who teens that saved his life. I'm Naruto. The boy now named Naruto spoke up. This is Sakura, Haku and Hinata. The girls all nod in response to their names being called out, but the man just had one question. I thought you called her Okuyora? Sakura closed her eyes at this. I go by the name. Just as the rest have another name of theirs they go by as well. Well, whatever the reason for different names, thank you for saving me. The man spoke with a smile. My name is Kanamira Hashu, but you can just call me Ken. Well, Kansas and Nada started. Do you know a place where we could stay for the night? Well, I was headed for Takigakure in that direction to meet some friends and family. Ken started as he pointed past them. You're all welcome to come if you like. The four nodded, and before Ken could take a step, Haku grabbed him by the shoulder, and suddenly they were only a few dozen meters away from the gates of Taki. Ken looked around in shock and surprise before also noticing that Naruto had his bag and his masks were all in there. Naruto handed Ken his bag back and they all proceeded into Taki. There, the four saw that the village was filled with good people. But for some reason, something just felt off about this whole place. Something trying to remain hidden from outside eyes. That was when Naruto felt something, or more like heard something. Suddenly and without any warning, Kurama appeared from behind him without anyone from the village noticing her. Her tails weren't there, and she wore the same outfit as before. Where were you? Naruto asked her while keeping in stride with the others. And what was that feeling I had earlier? Kurama chuckled a bit before answering. I went back into your mindscape right when we left the portal. She answered while putting her hands behind her head as they walked. As for that feeling, she got serious right then and there. There's another jinchuriki here, and from what I can tell, it's my brother, Chome. The Seven Tails Nanabai. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he listened to Kurama. From what he was able to gather, there were 9 total bija, so that meant along with him there were 8 other jinchuriki. Kami must have dropped them off near the closest one for a reason. Before he could continue his thought, Ken stopped them all and directed their attention to a small ramen stand. I know it's not much, but as a show of my thanks, I'd like to treat you to some ramen. Naruto suddenly remembered how much he loved the stuff in his old life and had a smile on his face. Hinata noticed the smile and giggled under her breath at her crush's old habit. Haku noticed her and turned to see Naruto with heart eyes looking right at the ramen. She laughed while Sakura just grinned and shook her head a bit. Kurama also laughed at him for his ramen addiction. Ken didn't know what was so funny, but he just had a very sinking feeling that he was gonna lose a lot of money for this. Konoha. Right now in Konoha, Hiruzen was already getting reports that IWA was getting bolder in their escapades. From what the old man could tell, things were gonna get worse before they got better. Ever since the death of his surrogate grandson Naruto Uzumaki, his teammate Sakura Haruno, and even the now former Hyuga heiress Hinata Hyuga, Konoha has been on the receiving end of several attacks. Most of the time it's just from smaller villages who wanted to prove themselves stronger than a main village. They were dealt with Konoha only suffering a few injuries and rarely any deaths. That wasn't the problem right now though. Right now, he was receiving reports of IWA subjugating smaller villages in their country to build up their army. What makes this even worse is the fact that Orochimaru has resurfaced again and teamed up with IWA, allegedly according to the council. That was another problem Hiruzen was facing. The council. Ever since Naruto died on the Wave mission almost 3 years ago, they had tried to stretch their reach of power from simply the civilian side of the village to the shinobi side. Especially with Sasuke. That little bastard had gotten even more arrogant in these past couple years. When he heard about his teammates dying, he laughed it off and claimed that they were weak despite the fact that he was the only member of Team 7 at the time that was unconscious. He and Kakashi had forgotten about the 2 and Team 7 was supposed to be disbanded, but thanks to the civilian council and their unfortunate pull, along with Danzo, secretly of course, they just added 2 new members and had the team resume training and missions. The 2 new members being 2 of Danzo's root ninja, Sai and some other girl. Hiruzen and most of the shinobi side of the council tried to revoke this, but were outvoted by both the civilians, the elders, and to no surprise Hayashi. The death of his eldest daughter had done very little to curb his superiority complex along with his clan. But back to important matters, when word from Jiraiya got to Hiruzen that Orochimaru had teamed up with IWA, the old Kage knew he would need the help of every shinobi, including Tsunade. Hiruzen ordered Jiraiya to find and bring her back to Konoha by any means necessary. After a few months she along with Shizen returned, but only because of what she was told about Naruto. Seeing as though she was related to him from her grandmother's side of the family, she felt that she had to continue the legacy of the Uzumaki, seeing as though she was seemingly the only one left now. The death of Naruto, Sakura and Hinata had a mixed bag of an effect on the remaining Konoha 12. Some, like Sasuke, Neji and Kiba, didn't think much on the 3 and considered them weak, though Kiba was a little bit heartbroken that he couldn't get his rocks off with Hinata at all. Others, like Ino, Shikamaru, Choji and Shino, were torn up about their friends' deaths. They vowed to become stronger for them. The last few though, Lee and Tenten, didn't really know the three, so their deaths really didn't concern them. Hiruzen put down one of the reports of IWA Nin attacking one of the trade routes for Konoha. This was about to get much worse, he could tell. This hit-and-run tactic that IWA was doing would catch up and soon enough turn into something worse. Hiruzen put his hand to his forehead and pressed his finger and thumb on the bridge of his nose. These are truly trying times for Konoha now, he said to himself. Sensei, the familiar voice of Jiraiya came from the window. Hiruzen shot up his head for a moment when he saw his former student, and hoped that nothing was too wrong now. What is it, Jiraiya? Is it something else involving IWA? Jiraiya stopped for a moment once Tsunade opened the door and entered the room. Ina sense, Sensei. She spoke to him. My spy network has just found out that IWA is targeting Takigakure as we speak. Jiraiya started. From what they could tell, it seems that IWA is trying to also subjugate the village and increase their own power for when they attack us for real. Hiruzen sighed at this. But then something didn't make any sense to him right now. Tsunade. He started as he looked towards her. This is usually Jiraiya's expertise in his spy network. Yours is medical, so why exactly are you here for Jiraiya's intel? Tsunade didn't miss a step as she went over to his desk and pulled out a file from her coat. She dropped it onto the desk and folded her arms as Hiruzen looked at it. Because when you find 6 1/4 bodies of IWA Jounin not far from Taki, all with various degrees of fatal kills, it becomes my medical business. The news caused Hiruzen to quickly look through the files and see the pictures of IWA ninja in various degrees right now. One was decapitated, the other 4 had fatal stab wounds and cuts all throughout their bodies, one that seemed to have been impaled through the gut, and then the small bits and pieces of a 7th one were seen on the pictures. Hiruzen was shocked. There's no way that Taki had ninja this precise or this brutal with their methods. That's when something hit him. He put the file down and looked to 2 of his 3 students. That energy that we felt earlier. He started with wide eyes while Jiraiya and Tsunade took a breath. Was it near Taki? Sensei. Jiraiya started. Where those IWA Nin are is where that chakra originated from. Hiruzen sighed as he leaned back in his chair. Then that means that we have something else to worry about. He started to them while looking out to the village. I only hope that this isn't something that will be the end of our home. Chapter 5 Masks. Back in Takigakure, after about 20 total bowls of ramen, with the majority coming from Naruto of course, Ken was really regretting his decision to treat them to lunch. Out of the 20 bowls, 12 went to Naruto, 8 to Hinata and the last 2 to both Haku and Sakura respectively. The 4 were thankful to Ken for treating them for saving his life and were about to head out of the village. But that was when Naruto picked up the scent of blood. Not just any blood, the blood of a sister. The blood of a jinchuriki. Without wasting any time, Naruto vanished from his group and Ken and suddenly appeared in a clearing outside of Taki's walls. He landed on a tree and looked down to see 5 grown Chunin men beating a girl no older than he was now. She had mint green hair, tan skin, and wearing tattered white clothing that had her blood all over it. She tried to crawl away from the men, but was stopped when one of them stepped on her spine, hard. She let out a scream of pain from her already racked body and tears were starting to stream down her face. The men had sadistic smiles on their faces as one of them knelt down to her. Now listen demon bitch. He started to her while she cried still. Me and my guys are gonna have some fun with you. And don't even think about screaming for help. No one wants a demon whore like you saved anyway. The girl lowered her head as more and more tears flooded out her eyes. The man who spoke to her moved back to her legs and furiously ripped off her pants, revealing her round curves to them all. The girl tried to struggle, to use her meager training to escape. Anything to get out of this situation, out of these woods, out of this village's gaze forever. But struggle as she might, the men held her down with great strength. This is my life, the girl thought to herself as she stopped struggling and gave up. Tormented, beaten, raped, controlled like a dog on a leash. Not even the 7 tails will talk to me anymore. What did I do to deserve this? What did I do? I just want this all to end. She closed her eyes as she felt one of the man's boners rubbing her exposed backside. I just want to live in peace. Then you have to take it, by force if necessary. A new voice came through. Suddenly, she felt something covering her up. The girl opened her eyes and the first thing she saw was the severed head of one of her attackers. She quickly rose up and looked around to see the rest of the Chunin lying dead on the ground in various states. She looked at herself and saw that she had one of the Chunin's vests covering her. She looked up and saw someone she had never met before. A teen a little younger than she was holding a red blade. He used one of the Chunin's vests to wipe the blood off of it and sheathed his blade. The girl could only look to the teen in both awe at his strength, and then blush at how handsome he looked to her. The boy looked to her and the girl got a really good look at his face. Her blush intensified. You okay there? Naruto asked her, aware of her blush, yet ignoring it for now. Why yeah, she managed to stutter out. Who are you? The name's Stark. But you can call me Naruto when it's just the 5 of us, Naruto answered her. 5 of us? She started right before 3 other figures appeared out of nowhere behind Naruto. This in turn caused the girl to get back in her defensive position only for Naruto to stop her. It's fine. They're with me, Naruto said, causing the girl to relax. What's your name, by the way? Fu, she answered him. Interesting. Hinata spoke up as she walked toward Fu. The mint-haired girl just stood there as this new girl just stood in front of her, staring straight into her eyes. You're just like Naruto-kun. What? Fu was very confused and uncomfortable now. She means that you're a jinchuriki. Naruto started off once Hinata moved out of the way. Just like me. Fu went wide-eyed at this. Another person was just like her, yet far stronger than she was. Just hearing that brought a slight shimmer of hope in her eyes at seeing just how strong Naruto looked right now. Just as she was about to say something, a familiar voice that she hadn't heard in a solid year spoke to her. Kurama. That boy has my older sister a part of his soul. Chome spoke up to her. This boy will help you, child. I can feel it already. Chome, Fu spoke through their link in shock. You're speaking to me again. Now that you have your hope back, yes. The 7 tails spoke to his container. Before Fu could continue speaking to him, Haku interrupted. As nice as it would be to stay out here, I've been thinking about something that I believe would be a great benefit to us. She smiled to them and continued. We should go back to Kan, since this affects him as well. The others nodded and Naruto looked to Fu. As the others left in the same way they arrived, he noticed something on the back of her neck that shouldn't be there and went over to her. She blushed when he looked at her, then turned away in shame once she realized he was looking at her neck. They marked you, didn't they? He asked her. It's a seal that makes it impossible for me to leave Taki or to even fight back against the ninja and civilians that attacked me, she answered with watery eyes. Then that'll be my first order of business when the 4 of us are done with whatever Haku has for us. Naruto spoke up, causing her to turn to him. Wait by the gates without being seen. When we're done, I'll take care of that seal for you. Okay? Fu smiled as tears went down her face. She nodded and Naruto smiled at her before disappearing himself. He reappeared next to his comrades back to Ken. Said man was completely taken aback when he saw them disappear like that only to reappear as well, and without drawing any attention to boot. I don't know what you all just did, Ken started after regaining his composure. But I guess this is where we part ways, I think. Before he could make a move, Haku placed her hand on his shoulder and turned him around. He saw her smile and was a little bit tense at the moment. Were they planning to do something to him? Did they just use him for a free meal and were done with using him now? Ken felt very nervous up until he heard what she had to say. Before you go, Kan-san, we have a proposition for you. 2 hours later, gates of Taki. Fu waited patiently for Naruto and his group. She didn't think that it would take this long for them to return, but then again she didn't know what type of person he was. Was he a good person? Were the other 3 kind or cruel? Just what exactly did he mean by taking care of the seal? Fu was putting a lot of faith in these 4 strangers. As she was sitting near the gate, her thoughts went back to only a couple of hours ago when she was nearly raped by those men. How helpless she was because of the seal and how she just gave up. It was not only what Naruto did to save her that got Fu her hope back, but it was also what he said to her when she muttered that she just wants peace. Then you have to take it, by force if necessary. Maybe he's right. Fu said to herself. Before she could say anything else, Taki's version of Umbu came out of the trees and surrounded her. There was around 10 of them, and they were all dressed in black and had white masks on their faces. Fu stood up quickly only for one of the Umbu to activate the seal on her neck, effectively stopping her from moving and causing her to fall back to the ground. The seal didn't hurt her per se, but it merely made her body incredibly limp whenever she would either try to run away, fight back, or if a ninja who knew how to activate it just felt like it. Demon Point, one of the Umbu spoke up. You are hereby under arrest for the murder of our fellow ninja, and sentenced to be executed on the spot. Fu may not have been able to see their faces, but she just knew that they were all smirking under them. She knew that this was the end for her, but instead of looking at her oncoming death in despair and acceptance, she looked to the Umbu with anger and a fierce determination they had never seen from her before. The Umbu shook that look away and prepared to strike her down with whatever they pleased, hoping to make her death as painful as possible. As they were about to make their move, they were stopped by a spear flying towards them at high speeds and also giving off a vibrant pink energy. The spear landed in between Fu and the Umbu sent to kill her, and that was when 4 individuals dressed differently suddenly appeared in front of them all. They all were wearing outfits almost similar to each other but different as to tell who was who. The tallest out of them all was wearing baggy white pants and dark sandals. He also had on what looked like a long-sleeved black shirt under a long, white coat with the kanjis for both wolf and fox on the back and black respectively, and went down to his ankles. He had 2 swords strapped to the left side of his hip, and was wearing a white wolf mask. The mask had blue eyes to it that seemed to be dull, but bright enough to tell that there was life in them. The second one was obviously the one who threw the spear since it was in her hands now. She wore white shorts, an all-black top that showed her midriff, and a white coat that went to her rear with the kanji for centaur on the back in black. Her mask was in the shape of a centaur, and had glowing pink eyes to it. The third had her hands in her pockets of her white, tight shorts. She had knee-high sandals that were black, a white shirt and white coat that stopped around her calves and had the kanji for bat on the back of it. Her mask was in the shape of a bat with teal eyes that glowed as well. The last one was wearing white pants similar to the boy. She had white sandals, and a black shirt under her white coat that only went to her lower back. She had a broadsword attached to her back and had a mask in the shape of a shark with yellow eyes that looked to be glowing. The 4 stood in front of Fu with a mixture of boredom at who was in front of them and protectiveness for the jinchuriki. The Umbu looked at the 4 and were on guard. "Who are you intruders?" one of them demanded from the 4. "You are interrupting our distribution of justice. Move, so we may kill the demon who murdered our men. If you're looking for the one who killed those so-called men," Naruto started with a deeper voice that was distorted and sounded evil in a way, "then look no further than right in front of you. You killed our men?" Another Umbu yelled out to them. He charged the wolf-masked teen poised to strike. "One of those men was my brother, you killed, you bastard." Just as he was about to attack Naruto with his kunai, suddenly, the teen was gone. The Umbu stopped in his tracks as Naruto appeared behind him with one of his swords drawn. The Umbu turned slowly towards the wolf-masked teen and was about to say something, but before he could, his head came off of his shoulders with a clean cut to boot. The Umbu fell to the ground in front of Fu and she was freaked out at how fast and precise the masked teen was. The other Umbu looked on in disbelief at what they could barely see. Another of their comrades was easily killed by one of these mysterious figures. They didn't have enough time to wonder what they should do next as the ones with the bat mask and the centaur mask started to move towards them at a slower pace. The Umbu readied up to defend themselves, but once the 2 vanished from sight, they all started to drop dead. 3 from fatal stab wounds from the centaur's spear, the other 3 from their chests being caved in by a vicious strike from the bat. By the end, only 3 were left. The shark-masked girl rushed them, broadsword in hand, and cut them all in 2 with one quick slash across their bodies. Fu couldn't believe the carnage she had just witnessed. These 4 absolutely dominated the 10 Umbu ninja. "Now then," Naruto spoke up as he turned to Fu. Said girl tensed at his gaze for a moment, but that all changed when he knelt down to her. The effect of the seal was still lingering. "Let's get rid of this annoying thing right here." He placed his hand onto her neck and it glowed a faint red color. Fu could only watch as this guy was doing whatever he was doing to the seal. She wondered just what he was doing until she felt a slight stinging pain on her skin. She yelped in pain when she felt her skin beginning to burn a bit, but she held in her voice and closed her eyes to ignore the pain. After a few seconds, the burning stopped, and she opened her eyes. She could move her body again, and quickly hugged the one in front of her that saved her from this hell. "Thank you," she kept repeating over and over again while crying tears of joy. "Thank you so much." "Now's not the time for thanks." Sakura spoke out in the same tone of voice that Naruto had used. "We must go. More are on their way here." The others nodded and Naruto picked Fu up. Before she could protest, they were already gone from Taki. The last thing that was seen from the ninja that went to investigate the bodies was the sight of 4 masked ninja taking their jinchuriki away. Chapter 6, Warning. With the 4, Fu was put down as they all rested in a cave far away from Taki. The mint-haired jinchuriki was on wobbly legs from how fast they were traveling and in such an unknown way as well that she tripped and fell. Luckily, Hinata caught her just in time. "Thanks," she said to her as Hinata set her down. "Now, not that I'm complaining, but just who the heck are you guys?" The 4 looked at her for a bit, and 2 of them chuckled. Those being Naruto and Haku. Hinata merely smiled under her mask and Sakura walked off to check the perimeter. The 3 removed their masks to show Fu the familiar faces she met earlier that day. She sighed in relief as the 3 started to explain to her who they were, and what they were planning on doing. To say that Fu was taken by surprise by all of this was an understatement. She had no idea what a hollow or what a hueco mundo was, but she could tell that they were telling her the truth in a weird way. They wanted to bring about peace by destroying the evil and corrupted, and this was their first stop, saving her. The jinchuriki of Taki and holder of the Nanabai, Chome, would be the first of many things to change in the elemental nations. So Fu started as the four sat in the cave. What exactly are you guys gonna do now? Hinata and Haku looked to Naruto for that answer since he was technically their leader in a sense. Naruto saw those looks and smirked a bit before leaning back, so he was lounging. Now, we find out just what's going on all around this world. 2 months later. 2 months had already passed by and things were looking strange for a few villages in the elemental nations. For the past 2 months, Taki has been in search of those 4 masked people that took their jinchuriki with no luck. To make things worse, the umbu they sent out to retrieve her were always sent back to them in bags with messages on them. Some saying to stop trying, others saying their ninja are too weak to continue this. This wasn't just subjected to Taki though. Once word spread of these 4 masked ninja taking Taki's jinchuriki, many of the villages started to keep their jinchuriki under lock and key. Especially Kumo and Iwa. Those 2 villages were in a bad shape in these 2 months. Especially Kumo. It wasn't long after the incident with Taki and the 4 did those masked individuals decided to try and take Kumo's jinchuriki. The saddest part for Kumo though was how close only 2 of them got. If it wasn't for the Reikage and the mountain of ninja overwhelming the bat and shark, then both B and Yujito would be gone by now. Unfortunately they suffered heavy casualties from those 2 as their power was completely foreign to the village. At least the village was still in a somewhat orderly state after that attack. Iwa wasn't as lucky though. When Kumo was being attacked by shark and bat, wolf and centaur were trying and succeeding in taking the jinchuriki for the Yambi and Gobi Bija. Iwa suffered heavy losses and even had several buildings taken out by a beam of pink energy fired from Centaur's masked mouth. After a short battle with Iwa's Tsuchikage, which the old man was nearly killed by the way, the group took both Rashi and Han without much resistance from the 2. Word spread around in those 2 months, and the 4 were now referred to as the Hollow 4 because of the hollow look in their eyes when they killed. Those were words spoken from the miraculous survivors of the 4's onslaught. As their names grew in the minds of other villages with jinchuriki out of fear, other villages were seeing them as saviors. Small villages were saved by the Hollow 4 when bandits or ninja would show up to harass them. Some saw them as heroes who surprisingly enough never asked for a reward of some kind. Like they were doing this out of necessity instead of profit. Once word reached to certain people though, some tried to recruit the Hollow 4. Some like Kiri to help in defending their still struggling home, Kusa to help strengthen their ranks. The land of iron out of respect for strong warriors. And eventually Konoha. Unfortunately that didn't go as smoothly as the other 3 had gone. With Kiri and Iron, the 4 politely declined, stating that their mission of peace could not be bound by someone else's village. Kiri and Iron respected that answer. Kusa tried to recruit them many times after their initial rejection, but once they started becoming hostile, the Hollow 4 paid a visit to their kage. Safe to say that Kusa left them alone after that, and nobody was hurt during that meeting. Konoha wasn't as lucky though. The time Konoha tried, it had been a month and a half after what the 4 did in Kusa. Konoha had heard of the various escapades these 4 had done all throughout the nation and the council was clamoring for their power. Hiruzen knew that the 4 were after jinchuriki and that they were very powerful ninja. The only question is why they were doing this. From what Jiraiya was able to gather from his spy network, there were now 2 groups of S-class ninja looking to capture the jinchuriki. The first being the Akatsuki, a group comprised of at least 10 or so members of S-ranked missing nin. Not much was known about them aside from wanting jinchuriki from the villages for some purpose. But that group must be seething at the second group. This Hollow 4, which is only comprised of just 4 ninja, had been taking jinchuriki left and right. First was Taki's, then Iwa's, and they almost had Kumo's. All that was left were Tsuna's, Kumo's, and possibly the Rokubi jinchuriki that went missing not too long ago from Kiri. There was also the fact that 2 jinchuriki were dead now. The former leader of Kiri, and Naruto. The thought of Naruto was enough to have the old man sigh in regret in his office for not doing more with the now deceased blonde. If it wasn't for that damned council and their hate for him, then Hiruzen could have even adopted the boy. Maybe even place him with one of the few people that wanted him. There was the Ichirakus, Irika, Enko, even Mikoto Uchiha or Hitomi Hyuga when they were alive. Unlike their families, they actually knew the difference between the prisoner and the prison. Now wasn't the time to reopen old wounds though. The Hollow 4 were practically unknowns. Unknown power, unknown status, unknown affiliations, and unknown location. Jiraiya's spy network couldn't even find a trace of them for the longest, and the Toad Sannin himself couldn't find even a small bit of intel on them. All they knew was that the group was fast, precise, ruthless when threatened, kind when necessary, and impossible to follow even at jounin speeds. Both Kumo, Iwa and Taki marked them as S-class ninja with a kill-on-sight order. Though, whenever any cocky ninja or bandit group confronted them, it always ended the same way. Body parts sent to those 3 villages. Sometimes even just boxes of blood as the remains. Hiruzen had never been this disturbed by a group like this, and he was in the shinobi wars. He wanted to leave the group alone since Konoha had no jinchuriki, and there was no reason for the Hollow Four to come to them, but the council spoke otherwise. They wanted to recruit them all, have them train Sasuke Uchiha, and then have the 3 females either placed in breeding with other clans or most likely just with Sasuke. The only ones who even tried to stop the council, Danzo and the elders from trying to do something stupid were of course Hiruzen, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Tsum and the original Inoshikacho. Unfortunately for them, they were outvoted and could only watch as the group was sent to recruit the 4. The group consisted of teams 7, 8, Guy and 10, along with a few Umbu that were actually Danzo's route, and surprisingly enough both Jiraiya and Tsunade. Hiruzen could do nothing but watch and hope the casualties wouldn't be too high. Though the idea of sending Genin on such a mission that was clearly out of their depth was something Hiruzen would have argued with tooth and nail about, he knew it would have all been in vain and didn't even bother. Some would say that is cruel, but to him it would be a wake-up call for the Genin. Not everything in the world is as simple as they would believe. After word got out of Naruto being the jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, some of those Genin went through an attitude adjustment. Mainly Kiba, Niji, Sasuke and surprisingly enough Lee and Tenten. The idea to them that Naruto was an actual demon like the villagers always claimed him to be back then was ridiculous at first, but with this reveal, to them it made sense now. To Sasuke, he knew that the blonde dobe was hiding something, but this was just great. If Sasuke had activated his Sharingan beforehand, he could have had complete control of the Kyuubi itself. To Niji, he always saw Naruto as a nuisance that his disgrace of a cousin liked, but to hear this, he not only saw Naruto as a monster who was fated to die early on in life, but also he saw Hinata as his demon-loving whore now. Kiba and Tenten saw this as an unnatural being that deserved to die, with Kiba being more vocal about it. Lee saw him as the epitome of unyouthful and refused to see otherwise. The rest of the group was indifferent about the whole thing. The group left the village in search of the Hollow Four and with Jiraiya's spy network, they finally caught a break. The Hollow Four were reportedly seen near the border of Fire Country and headed to Whirlpool. The fact that they were so close meant they were either moving towards Suna or back to Kumo once more. Didn't really matter as long as the group got to them in time. It only took a little under a week to reach the border to Whirlpool. Things looked tranquil to an extent as the Konoha shinobi walked on to where the waters were separating them from the rest of the land. To some, it was nice to look out into the vast waters and wonder what is beyond. For Tsunade, she remembered hearing stories of this place from her grandmother Mido. It nearly brought a tear to her eye as she remembered that in a sense she was the last of the Uzumaki now. Alright. Jiraiya spoke up, getting everyone's attention. The reports said that the Hollow Four were spotted somewhere around this border. Break off into teams and see if you can locate them or any traces of them. The air around them got colder at the Toad Sannin's next words. Under no circumstance are you to attack them. We have no ill will with them aside from recruiting them. Nothing more, nothing less. Everyone nodded quickly at his words with the exception of Tsunade and left to hunt the 4 down. For the Genin, this was the time to show how strong they had become. For the Root, this was to further extend the reach of power their master desired. For the Sannin, this was to truly aid Konoha and hope for nothing catastrophic to occur. Naruto. Right now, Naruto was sitting in a clearing overlooking the waters of Whirlpool. He had felt some sort of connection with this place as he had been informed by Kurama to check it out. She had been a bit of a pain like back in Hueco Mundo but not as loud. If he had to guess, she mellowed out since coming to this world. After sitting there a few minutes, Naruto felt a familiar presence appear behind him. You felt it too? He asked out loud, not even bothering to turn around. Yes. The ever-present, stoic tone of Sakura spoke out. She walked next to him and sat down beside him. They're familiar to me, most of them. What about you? I remember 2 of them. Naruto spoke out as he narrowed his eyes at the thought of who was among them. One that was arrogant and prideful. The other, Naruto stopped and turned to look Sakura in the eyes. The one that killed the both of us and Haku. Sakura went wide-eyed for a moment then glared as well, uncharacteristically. Then we even more reason to kill them. Not yet, Naruto spoke standing up. Why? She stood up too, not really surprised by his rebuttal. They seek the 4 of us, but I also sense that a few are after the jinchuriki we have. Naruto stretched a bit. Along with this Akatsuki as well. Seems this Konoha group was followed and didn't even realize it. Then that means we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. She spoke out. Get your mask and tell the others to get ready to move out, Naruto ordered after yawning a bit. Everything isn't ready yet, so we can't afford to cause too much damage. Sakura nodded and left through Sonito. Naruto sighed and pulled his mask from his belt. He placed it on his face and cracked his neck a few times before using Sonito to meet up with his group of ninja, Team 8 and 10. Both teams had decided to work together in order to find traces of the Hollow Four. Since Team 8 was the tracker team, and would most likely need assistance, it made sense for Team 10 to join. Not at all the fact that both Asuma and Kurenai were dating. Not at all. Do you really think we'll find them out here? Ino asked her sensei. I honestly don't know. The man spoke with the cigarette in his mouth. But if they are here, then we might just catch a break. Hopefully they are. That was Team 8's replacement member for Hinata. Her name is Saya. She's a little taller than Hinata was, brash and boastful, black hair to her shoulders, and a Sasuke fangirl. Kind of a downgrade for Team 8 in all honesty. I really can't stand the water here. Why is that? Shikamaru asked her, slightly curious as opposed to falling asleep while walking again. I don't know. It's just way too creepy for my taste, Saya answered him. It used to be something better beforehand. A distorted and deep voice spoke to them from above. They all got into a defensive stances and looked up a tree to see one of the four lounging on a branch. The leader, to be more precise. You must be the leader? Asuma spoke up, taken aback by the fact he didn't even sense the teens sneak up on them. I am. He answered. Heh. Kiba started with an arrogant grin. You don't look so tough. Within a fraction of a second, Stark had one of his blades near millimeters from Kiba's right eye. Care to repeat that? Kiba was scared shitless at that point and pissed himself. The fear in his eyes was all the answer Stark needed as he disappeared once more up the tree. Only this time, he was looking down right at them all. Is there something you all need, or are you here to just pass by? Judging by the headbands, I'll go by the former instead of the latter. Asuma swallowed the lump in his throat as he nervously stepped forward. He looked to Kurenai, who nodded to him nervously, before turning back around only for Stark to be right in front of him. He jumped a bit before noticing how lax the leader was. The teen was no taller than Shikamaru or even Choji, and he was yawning beneath his mask from what the man could tell. My name is Asuma Saratobi. Jounin of the Leaf Village, here to offer you and your group. No, Stark interrupted before Asuma could continue. No, he asked nervously. Yeah. The answer is no, Stark answered him while popping his neck a few times. What we want is something not many villages have, and we won't waste our time in a village like yours who values traders and tradition over loyalty and family. His words hit the two Jounin as they had a feeling he knew what he was talking about. With all due respect, Wolf, Kurenai stepped up. We would be grateful if you did join our village. Whatever it is you all are searching for, Konoha can help. First off, name's not Wolf. That surprised the group for a bit. Name's Stark. Get it right, please. Second of all, there is nothing any of you can do to assist us in what we want. And what exactly is that? A new voice spoke up as he joined the group. That voice being none other than Tsunade along with Jiraiya, Team 7 and Guy, and the Umbu team. Stark looked at her with a bored expression under his mask. He put his hands in his pockets, and sighed. That's for us to know, and none of you to figure out. Then tell me, where do you all come from? Jiraiya decided to prod answers out of the gaki in the hopes that he would hint at his real identity. What business do you have with Jinchuriki? And what exactly is your endgame? So many questions. Stark spoke as he turned fully towards the white-haired Sannin, causing them all to get into defensive stances. All right. Guess I can at least answer a few of those questions. He scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Where we're from is of little concern to anybody, but if you insist on asking, we came from a place of sand and chaos. Death in all directions, a feed or be fed upon mentality. No place for any of you. That can't be Suna, can it? Kakashi asked as he tried and failed to see through that mask along with Sasuke. No. This place is of no importance to us anymore. Stark continued on. What our business with the Jinchuriki is, well, that's our little secret now. Stark saw the twitch in the Umbu around him and knew that they weren't here to negotiate. And the last question you had, well, the endgame is the same as the endgame in war. The Jounin and Sannin all gasped at hearing this and immediately went on the defensive. And what would that truly be? Tsunade asked with narrowed eyes and clenched fists. Simple. Stark spoke as he took his hands out of his pockets and pointed a finger to his left where the Umbu were. Purging the sinners. Before anyone could say anything, multiple blue beams of unknown energy flew at the group of 12 root Umbu, killing them instantly in the process. Everyone looked on in horror as entire parts of the Umbu were gone now. Some lost their lunches seeing that gory sight that would stay in their minds forever. Stark lowered his arm and put it back in his pocket. The remaining group stood motionless for a moment, then jumped in shock and fear once the other four appeared next to Stark. Now you all know what one of us can do, Stark started. This is your only warning. Come after us again, and the next batch of bodies will be the ones within your village's walls. The Konoha shinobi went wide-eyed and tensed at his words. By now. And just like that, the Hollow Four were gone without a trace, their warning evident in all forms of the word. 249, Chapter 7 Victims, Ruins of Yuzu. After Stark's demonstration of power and his warning, the Konoha group left the border and rushed back to Konoha to inform their Hokage. They were all still shaken by what they just saw. Stark obliterated the Umbu with no hesitation and without warning. Did he know that they were root? If he did, then he must know Danzo, and if that is the case then he would most likely be a former Konoha shinobi. That made no sense to them as they continued to leap from tree branch to tree branch. With the four though, they were all sitting around a fire in one of the only places still standing partially in the ruined village of Yuzu. The library. Naruto was lounging as per usual with a big goofy smile on his face at what he had done. Hinata and Haku were chuckling at the looks on their faces when he used his Siro on those root Umbu, and Sakura had a smirk on her face as she remembered the scared shitless look on both Kakashi's and Sasuke's faces. Fu, Rashi and Han were also there, with Fu laughing the most out of the three. So you made one of them shit themselves then killed all those other guys? Fu asked in between laughs. Yeah, that's about right, Naruto answered her. Had to send a message somehow. Well, be that as it may. Rashi started, getting everyone's attention. You still haven't told us just why we're here, or what you plan to do with us and the other jinchuriki. That's simple. Hinata started this time. All anyone cares about is power and control. Their greed being the deciding factor to everything that happens in this world. They don't want peace or true order. All they care about is power. A plague on this world that we have the responsibility to be rid of. So you take away their jinchuriki to destabilize that power? Rashi asked with wide eyes. Yes, Sakura answered. Villages like Iwa, Taki and Kumo are filled with a lust for power that needs to be purged from this world. Her stoic tone caused the three jinchuriki to freeze up at her words as she continued. It also doesn't hurt our progress to disrupt a group of S-class ninja from taking you all away for their own selfish and power-hungry ways. Right now, we're going to be using these ruins as a base of sorts for now, Naruto started as he sat up. This place is special from what I've been able to find out. Apparently my clan used to live here, up until they were all killed by power-hungry men who feared their power. A power that was used not for violence but peace. They received no assistance because Konoha wanted their jinchuriki for the power as all things dumbed down to. He stood up and continued. That jinchuriki was my mother. The three jinchuriki present were shocked at hearing this. Konoha wanted her, so they let this place that was once filled with life and hope be destroyed because of their greed. I owe it to my clan and my mother Retribution for that. He began to walk away from the group, at least until Haku asked, Where are you going? Naruto stopped and turned to them with a stern look. To learn from my clan's past, to make a better future. He nodded to his friends who nodded back and walked off to a staircase that was in the back. The stairs went down to the bottom of the library to an empty room that was designed to be ignored by those who are not Uzumaki, so the others did just that while Naruto had tried to see past the emptiness of it all. It took him a few minutes, but he was finally able to see past the ceiling to get to what he was looking for. The Uzumaki archives. Konoha, a week later. The group sent to recruit the Hollow Four finally returned after witnessing what the leader, now named Stark, did to the Umbu squad in an instant. The thought of one man, or actually a teenager, being able to do that had a mixture of reactions from the group. Some found that power to be dangerous and unstoppable like the rumors made it out to be. Those were the smart people of the group that didn't want to fight the Four. They saw that power as something far out of their league. Others thought that that kind of power should be theirs. That was mainly just Sasuke and surprisingly enough Kakashi. They couldn't see past that mask Stark was wearing nor could they copy that jutsu he used. Whatever it was, they wanted and in their minds deserved it. It didn't matter anymore right now as the group went back to the Hokage to report what they saw and understood to a fault. As Hiruzen listened to two of his former three students, he couldn't help but wonder just what exactly this meant for Konoha. The Hollow Four were clearly trying to purge the sinners, but what did that even mean? What were their goals? And why did they need jinchuriki? Too many questions and no answer in sight. Hiruzen arched a brow though when Jiraiya described whatever move the leader did to the Umbu. The description of blinding blue lights fired from his fingertip wasn't the best way to describe it, but it matched with survivors of their attacks' descriptions. Somehow the Four could use light-based jutsus. At least that's what Hiruzen was hoping for. The council, to no one's surprise, had a field day with this new information. They wanted to place these 4 in the bingo book with an S-ranked kill-on-sight order, but Hiruzen shut that down fast. 1, because they didn't need the pressure of actual bringing in those funds for an S-ranked bounty, and 2 was because the 4 weren't a part of Konoha to begin with. The council had tried to opt to sending more of their forces to find and capture the 4 at one point despite their current predicament with IWA, but that was quickly shot down. Unfortunately, that didn't stop Danzo from sending out his root umbu to capture or kill the 4. Right now, Sasuke was furious. He was shown a power unlike anything he had ever seen before in his entire life, and it belonged to someone unworthy in his eyes. He was an Uchiha, he should have that power. Only he deserved it. Who cares what the 4 wanted the jinchuriki for? He needed that power to avenge his clan and kill Itachi. Afterwards he would use those 3 girls as breeding stock to rebuild his clan as he saw fit. After the mission and debriefing, he went back to his home only to find a note attached to his door. Sasuke, if you wish to seek out the power of those 4, come by this location by midnight tonight. Bring your gear. Sasuke read the short note and smirked wickedly as the paper had coordinates for the meeting spot at the bottom. He would gain the power he so rightfully deserved. Back with the 4. Haku had been on watch for the night, sensing the 2 unexpected visitors that followed the Konoha group earlier. She was told to watch for any activity, and since she had the best senses out of the 4, she stayed on top of a large tree overlooking the forest. As she looked out into the distance, sensing the energy of 2 men not too far away from them, she smiled as the 2 started to move. Haku placed her mask on her face and flashed away, excited for what was about to happen now. Do you really believe that load of bullshit, Kakuzu? A gray-haired man with a red scythe resting on his shoulder and a dark cloak with red clouds on it spoke up. You should never underestimate your enemy Haiden. Kakuzu, a tall man wearing the same outfit, answered his partner. These 4 may have 3 of the jinchuriki, but their powers are still unknown to us. Leader has asked that we only examine and watch until they make their move. Fuck that, Haiden shouted as the 2 sped on to where the 4 and the jinchuriki would be. There's no fucking point in just sitting around if we can just get our prizes and kill a few heathens in the process. Kakuzu just shook his head as they continued to make their way towards the ruins of Yuzushiogakure. As they were getting closer, Kakuzu felt that something wasn't right. He had a very sinking feeling in his stomach and multiple hearts of an impending danger that should be avoided at all costs. He looked forward towards his partner and was about to say something along the lines of a warning, but that all stopped when he saw that Haiden now had a long spear going through his skull. The spear flew past Kakuzu and impaled him onto a tree without the multiple heart man realizing it. Haiden! Kakuzu yelled out as he saw his partner cursing up a storm while trying to free himself to no avail. I was wondering when you 2 would come out of your hiding spot. The distorted voice of one of the 4 spoke out from directly behind the man. Kakuzu jumped away from her and turned. She stood there with her arms folded under her breast. So you must be the centaur. He asked her with a sneer at how easily she snuck up behind him. Nilil. She spoke up as she started to walk towards him. It's nice to meet you. Kakuzu got into stance as the now named Nilil stepped towards him. The strange thing about her though wasn't her mask or the voice, it was her demeanor. She looked relaxed, too relaxed. Almost as if she knew fighting these 2 would be no problem. Kakuzu kept his guard up as he analyzed her for some kind of weakness, or an easy opening. He had heard rumors that the 4 could send blasts of chakra out to completely destroy their opponents, but so far it was just a rumor. Kakuzu began to sweat drop as he was facing an opponent that he knew next to nothing about with powers he could not understand or predict. Before he could make a move though, Nilil stopped him with her next question. Tell me something. Why exactly are you and your organization after the jinchuriki? That is of no concern to you or your group. Kakuzu started as he readied himself, preparing to use one of his masks. That's a shame. She started as she stretched to the side a few times. I'd rather not fight you and your associate, so I'll ask you to leave peacefully please. Kakuzu was taken aback from this. She was asking him and Haiden to retreat now or face her. This was a golden opportunity in so many ways to the greedy Akatsuki member. The 4 had bounties on their heads that would make anybody a very rich man, but they also had individual bounties as well, each being a substantial amount. Kakuzu was very tempted to fight her, to take his chances and let his greed speak volumes for him at this moment, yet his rational mind was contemplating her offer. He knew that she had power that he had never seen before and a fighting style and jutsus that he had never experienced before. Fighting her seemed to be a bad idea and also a good one at the same time. If he fought her in one, then that would mean one less member of the Hollow Four to oppose the Akatsuki, and he would receive the large bounty on her head along with her heart, to add to his collection. Decisions. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough time to really contemplate his answer as he heard a loud shout from behind him. "You fucking heretic!" Haiden shouted as he finally got the spear out of him. "I'm going to sacrifice you too, Jashin, you whore!" Haiden charged in blindly and in a rage towards the still calm teen. When he was within striking range of her, he swung his large scythe down towards her, hoping to end her miserable life early and sacrifice her to his god. Kakuzu watched on as he thought that something wasn't right. The girl wasn't reacting. She wasn't attempting to dodge, nor was she attempting to block with anything on hand. That was when he realized something. She wasn't trying anything because she knew something they didn't. "Haiden, wait!" Kakuzu yelled out to his partner, but was a tad bit too late. Nelio raised her left hand and, to their surprise, caught the blade of Haiden's weapon in the palm of her hand. There was a very small bit of dust that blew around her feet as she caught the scythe, but aside from that, she was completely unfazed. "Then you leave me no choice," she spoke as she pulled her right arm back and her spear appeared within her hand. Haiden was stunned by what he just saw but wasn't worried since he was immortal. He smirked as he felt the spear being forced into his chest. "Is that all you got, bitch?" he taunted as he started to cackle maniacally. "It's gonna take a lot more than that to do me in." "I know." Nelio spoke up as she clenched her left hand and shattered to scythe, much to the surprise and shock of the zombie duo. She then used her now free left hand to reach for the bottom part of her mask, lifting it up so her mouth was visible to the two. They couldn't see the rest of her face, but that didn't matter right now. What did matter was that she had opened her mouth wide to him. "Heh. What the fuck is this supposed to be?" Haiden spoke to her with a grin. "Am I supposed to be scared or summit?" He didn't get far as Nelio fired a pink beam of light towards him. The beam engulfed his skull, incinerating it instantly before she took care of the rest of the body. In only a few seconds, the crazed immortal Jashin priest was reduced to nothing, not even ash. Kakuzu saw this and was frozen in fear. He had never seen anything like that before. The power and the ferocity of that attack was devastating, not to mention incredible. Nelio's beam of energy stopped as she closed her mouth and placed her mask back on fully. She placed her spear on the side of her and looked directly towards Kakuzu. "Either stay and be destroyed, or leave," she said to him as a dark aura of energy was emanating from her spear. Kakuzu looked to her eyes, or at least to where her eyes were supposed to be behind the mask, and felt as if he was staring at his imminent death. Seeing his opportunity, Kakuzu turned and ran away to inform the rest of the Akatsuki of what just happened. This had been a great loss to Akatsuki, but also with this they learned some valuable information about one of the four. As Kakuzu left, Nelio sighed in annoyance. She really didn't want to fight anyone, but they left her no choice when one of them rushed in at her. She turned around and sonitoed back to campsite, surprising the jinchuriki but not the others. "Haku." Sakura started as she was seated on the ground. "I take it you killed one?" Haku took off her mask and sighed as she sat next to Fu. "Unfortunately. It was one of those Akatsuki members we heard about. The one who couldn't die, and the one with multiple hearts. I killed the priest guy." Han and Rashi tensed. They fought against the Jashin priest before and barely escaped last time. To hear that this teen defeated and even killed him with no trouble was astonishing. "Well, I guess that means we can't stay here for too long then." Naruto spoke as he stood up from his seated position. "I have what we need from here, so we can move out at dawn." The others nodded as they knew that this whole situation was gonna get worse for certain people soon. Chapter 8 Home, Akatsuki Hideout. "What do you mean Haiden is dead?" The mysterious form of the leader spoke up to Kakuzu in an angered tone from his holographic position along with the others. Kakuzu tensed at the harshness of the leader, and sweat dropped for a moment before explaining everything he knew so far. He left out no detail as he explained how he and Haiden tracked the Konoha team discreetly to where the four were along with the jinchuriki. How the leader, now named starrk, obliterated several Umbu members in a flash of light they couldn't see from their far vantage point. Stark's warning to the group and then running into the one now named Nelio. The remaining members of the group had a mixture of reactions. Some were shocked at what Nelio did to the supposed immortal, and some actually scoffed at this. Out of everyone though, Tobi/Obito was the most intrigued. He had heard of the Hollow Four before they started taking jinchuriki away but paid them no mind, thinking they were a mercenary group of some kind. Now though, they had become a thorn in his side for his attempt at his grand plan. They would have to be dealt with at some point. As Kakuzu finished his report, the leader sighed in frustration. "Then it seems we must hurry then. These Hollow Four think that they can stop us, but in truth, they are simply making our job much easier." Zetsu. The half-man half-plant emerged from the ground next to Kakuzu. "You will monitor these four and report back to me once you find where they are going along with their weaknesses and strengths." "Yes, leader." The white half spoke first. You want to report on the other jinchuriki as well? The black half brazenly asked. The leader nodded to him, and he began. Well, the Ichibi is still within the walls of Suna as its Kazekage. He is well protected but nothing that either Sasori and Deidara can handle. The Nibi is still in Kumo, also protected as is the Hachibi. The white half started, then the black continued. The Sanbai and the Rokubi are still missing though. The San because of the war in Mist, and the Roku for an unknown reason. Probably also the civil war in Mist. Who knows for sure? The white half finished up. Then there are the Yambi, Gobi and Shichibi in the hands of the Hollow Four. Lastly, the Kyubi was already killed a while ago, but his body has yet to be found. The leader huffed at that last bit of information and looked to the rest of the group. It doesn't matter for now. We continue with the others as planned. Sasori and Deidara will retrieve the Ichibi, Itachi and Kisame will find the Sanbai and if at all possible the Rokubi, while Kakuza will focus on retrieving the Nibi with help from Tobi. Understood? Ah. Tobi started through his hologram. Tobi didn't want to hang around Zombie Boy. His complaints were mainly ignored as the leader dismissed the group meeting, fuming at the news he had just received. Back with the four, it didn't take the group of 7 to leave the ruins of Yuzu. As a matter of fact, the moment the sun rose from the horizon, the four had already woken up the jinchuriki and prepared them to leave. Han and Rashi could tell that the four were serious about leaving now while Fu was a little on the slow side. Mainly because she was still asleep. After a pretty hilarious wake-up on Hinata's part involving dropping water on Fu's face, the group got ready to leave. So, where are we going? Han asked Naruto in a curious tone. We still need to find the others. Sakura spoke in her usual tone. But we can't simply leave you 3 alone in the open while we do so. Are you implying that we're weak? Rashi spoke in an irritated tone at the seemingly insulting way she said that. What Sakura means is that the Akatsuki will take any advantage they can to get to you 3 while we take care of things. Naruto spoke up, calming the man. There is a place I found in the archives that will keep you 3 and the others off the radar for now. That's where we're going. He nodded to the rest of the Hollow Four and they nodded back before taking hold of an individual jinchuriki's shoulder. This confused them for a second, which is all it took for the group of 7 to disappear in a burst of speed. Suddenly, they were now at the entrance of some kind of cave in the middle of a lush forest. As soon as they appeared there, Fu quickly ran into a bush and hurled what little food she had in her stomach, while Han felt sick and Rashi bent over, hands on his knees. What the hell was that? Han asked after he regained his composure. That doesn't matter for now. Naruto answered him as he started to walk inside the cave followed by his team. The jinchurikis followed as well once they felt better and went inside. They caught up with the four as they made their way deeper into the cave. The darkness of it all began to engulf them as the light from the outside faded completely. Sakura used her energy to make a small siro in the palm of her hand, lighting the way. The group continued on until they hit a dead end. Fu started as she scratched her head. So are we supposed to just wait in this dark cave for you guys or, we're here? Naruto interrupted her as he bit down on his thumb and smeared blood onto the wall. At first, nothing happened. The jinchuriki were apprehensive about this as they had no idea what to expect at first, while the four continued to watch on. Just as Rashi was about to speak his displeasure, a large seal began to glow a bright red color all along the cave wall. The 3 looked on in surprise while the 4 stood at the ready. The wall started to part like a gate, and opened up to show a breathtaking sight. Inside, down in what looked to be some kind of crater, was a large city of some kind. The buildings were old and worn down, the ground cracked from years of nature, dust all around. A waterfall off past the city falling along from an opening high above and forming a river. The only light inside was from the hole where the water was coming from. They all looked in awe at what they saw as Naruto moved forward first, and held up his finger. Aiming it straight at where the water was coming from, he charged a blue siro, shocking the jinchuriki. What are you? Fu couldn't finish her sentence as Naruto fired a small ball of energy towards the waterfall. It connected and formed a large hole that not only caused more light to come in, but also far more water. The water came rushing down as it began to encircle the city in droves. Once that happened, the city began to glow from the ground. Sakura, Hinata, and Haku were surprised by this while the jinchuriki were in shock. It's a seal, Han spoke up. Yes, Naruto started as he knelt down and brushed some dirt over. It revealed a faded-out kanji for release on it. Naruto smirked and cut his thumb before placing it on the kanji. Time to see what it really looks like. Naruto wiped his blood on it, and suddenly the city began to glow violently. The buildings began to fade out almost like a mirage, and the city started to fade in. When it did, they all saw it, a prosperous city filled with people with red hair. The remnants of the Uzumaki clan. Whole Naruto shot at disappeared as a regular waterfall came into view. There was crops growing not far from the river with people looking after them. A school with children playing outside or practicing their ninja skills. A large building off in the center of the city, no village. The village was filled with people going about their lives when suddenly they all looked to the cave entrance and saw the 7 unexpected guests. Ninja dressed in dark blue outfits with black pants and vest along with a headband with the Uzumaki symbol on it, surrounded the 7. Han, Rashi and Fu readied themselves while the 4 simply stood unfazed and relaxed. Who are you, and how did you enter our home? A man in front of them with a tanto drawn narrowed his eyes toward them. There was no way anyone could break through the seals, right? The elder said so. Who were these people? Those were just a few of the thoughts going through everyone's minds as the people saw the visitors high above at the entrance. To answer your question, Naruto started with no fear whatsoever in his body language. As a matter of fact, he scratched the back of his head sheepishly and yawned. My name is starrk, leader of the Hollow 4. He pointed towards the others. This is Ulquiorra, Neliel, and Halibel. The others are the jinchuriki we liberated. Naruto paused as the ninja readied themselves. Even they've heard of the 4 from time to time. Then why are you here, and how did you get here in the first place? The man asked in a harsh tone. Naruto smirked. That's easy. My real name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, son of Kushina Uzumaki, the princess of Uzushiobikure. The effects were almost immediate. The ninja were shocked as they did not think that the heir had survived. That would explain how they were able to get through. Only someone of the right bloodline could break through the seals. If that is true, the man started as the ninja began to relax a bit. Then I must take you to our leader. Who exactly is your leader? Hinata asked as she crossed her arms. The man sheathed his tanto, and ordered the rest to stand guard around them. He turned and began walking, prompting them to follow. That was when he answered. His name is Mito Uzumaki. Chapter 9 Clan, where we left off. Right now, the 4 and the jinchuriki were being led through the prosperous village. The remnants of the Uzumaki clan were thriving under this mountain, completely unseen or forgotten by the outside world. So it came as no surprise to see the unease in the faces of the people they all passed on the streets. The ninja were leading the group towards a moderate-sized building that, while smaller than the Hokage Tower, was one of the most lavish buildings in the village. It stood at around 3 stories tall, was made of a clear mahogany wood that shines when the small patches of sunlight hit it, and the Uzumaki swirl was largely imprinted onto the front of the building right above the doors. As they walked towards the building, a crowd had gathered and watched with both anticipation of what was to come, and a subtle nervousness as to who these people were. The ninja from before, a fairly tall, light-skinned man with dark violet eyes, short red hair tied up, and a scar along the left side of his face leading to his neck, stood in front of the group while the rest of his squad surrounded them still. Once we enter, show your utmost respect to the elder. They all nodded as the man was open the doors and lead them inside. As they entered, the interior looked just as nice as the exterior. Glossed wood floors, tall pillars within the halls, furniture for what seemed like a waiting room of sorts. All in all, it was a nice building. The man led them to a flight of stairs and they ascended to the top floor. All the while said man kept glancing at Naruto. His thoughts kept going back to how this boy could be the heir of Princess Kushina, and if so, where has he been all this time? Something about this didn't sit well with the man as they made it to a set of double doors. The man went to knock when a loud crash was heard inside followed by a shout. Goddamn paperwork! The ninja sighed at hearing this while the 4 raised a collective eyebrow and the jinchuriki simply sweat dropped. The man hesitantly knocked on the door, and another crash was heard inside. If this is someone with more paperwork, I swear I will send someone to the fucking moon. The loud shout rocked the door as it opened harshly to show a woman standing in front of them with an aggravated look to her face. She had fair skin and was pretty tall, pupilless brown eyes, long bright red hair tied up into 2 buns on each side of her head while most flowed to her mid-back, a purple diamond on the center of her forehead, and was wearing a simple white shirt and tight black pants that showed her curves. Right now, she was focusing her rage onto the man in front of her, hoping he had more paperwork just to give her an excuse right now to send someone to the moon. She calmed down once she saw it was just one of her fellow ninja with some unfamiliar faces behind him. Ito. She started in a sweet tone that sent shivers down the now named Ito. Who exactly are these people that I have never seen before? Ito swallowed the lump in his throat as he and the rest of the ones outside the room saw the devastation within. Papers all around, some even burnt or still burning, stuffing from the couch all over the place, the ceiling fan hanging by one wire, and the desk somehow impaled onto a wall. How exactly did she do that was the question the guests were asking themselves. Well, Lady Mito, this group broke through the seal and entered here themselves. Ito answered her as Mito raised a brow. She eyed the 7 and wound up stopping on the one in front. Something about him felt familiar. And how exactly did the breakthrough Ito? She kept her eyes on Naruto as he stared back at her impassively. Well, it is actually the one whom you are staring at, Lady Mito. Ito answered as he noticed his leader's stern look towards the leader of the 4. He claims to be in Uzumaki. Mito narrowed her eyes for a moment before said Uzumaki spoke up. I didn't think you'd still be alive if the archives in the Uzumaki vaults in Yuzu were right. Somehow it doesn't surprise me that you look the same as you did in your prime, Lady Mito. Mito narrowed her eyes to him, slightly catching the subtle jab at her technique. And who exactly are you? I take it you are the one who broke through the seal. I am. Naruto answered her as he bowed his head in respect. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, son of the princess of Uzushiogakure, Kushina Uzumaki. Your successor, Lady Mito. The reaction was instant as Mito went wide-eyed and slack-jawed. She took a step back as she looked the boy up and down for a moment. When he raised his head and looked her in the eyes with a soft expression, she gasped in a relieved way. He may look completely different from the way Kushina looked like, but those were eyes of her strength and compassion. The same traits that made Kushina special back then. Hearing of her death was hard for Mito, especially when she heard through a rumor that the princess had a child that died during the QB attack. Safe to say, Mito was happy that those rumors were not true. If that is the case, Mito started with a smile. Then this is a time for celebration. As of today, the son of Kushina has returned to his family. Naruto smiled back to her, the first, real genuine one since he was back in this world with his friends. This was going to be a long explanation with a lot of details left out, but it was nice that there was finally a place where he could say he was home. Konoha at the time. Right now, everyone was in a frenzy once word of the Hollow Four's power spread throughout the village. Most wanted them to be defeated and used by the village, others who were smart wanted nothing to do with them at all. The Konoha 12 had a similar divide, but only between a few. Kiba was furious that he froze up when that wannabe ninja surprised him. Akamaru didn't say anything as he was scared out of his wits from Stark's power. Kiba wanted revenge and would do anything to attain it, then later use those girls as his personal bitches, especially that shark one. Niji found that fate has sent these monstrous beings here as a test to him. His delusion on fate told him it was destiny to kill them and that it is fated for the 4 to fall at the hands of a strong Hyuga prodigy. Yep, delusional. Sasuke had been training like a madman with this Danzo person and Kakashi, determined to take the power this Stark had shown them for himself. To no one's surprise, Kakashi and Danzo wanted Sasuke to bring those 4 to their knees in order to serve Konoha, while Sasuke just wanted their power to kill Itachi. Also delusional. Those 3 were the main ones that were angered and wanted some form of revenge/glory/power from the 4. The others on the other hand were completely shaken by what they saw. Stark literally obliterated the Umbu by just a lift of his finger. How could anybody want to fight someone like that? The Ino Shikacho trio had been scarred by that event, and wanted no part of those 4 at all. To Shikamaru, anyone who seemed lazier than him that can kill with just a simple motion was far too troublesome for his taste to deal with. Choji kept losing his lunch whenever he thought of that day and actually lost weight a bit as a result. Ino tried to force herself to forget the memory with her family's jutsu, to no avail. Shino was indifferent towards the 4 and simply saw them as an obstacle that should not be attempted to overcome. Saya was practically in the same boat as Ino, only she had no fancy techniques to help her out with trying to forget. Lee saw the group as unyouthful but couldn't help but wonder how strong they were. To be able to disappear and reappear without a trace was phenomenal to the bushy-browed genin. He would have to train even harder to reach that level of strength. Tenten was indifferent, or at all, as she was mainly wondering where the 4 got their weapons more than anything. The Jounin senseis were also the same. Kakashi wanted to capture them. Kurenai and Asuma wanted to leave them alone. Guy wanted to fight them. Tsunade and Jiraiya had no clue what to think when they saw what Stark did. In all their years as shinobi, they had seen it all, but this Stark showed them they were that was beyond anything they had ever seen before. All done by a teenager no less. Hopefully they wouldn't have to go back to fight him, let alone all 4. The idea felt suicidal at this point. It's not like any of the Sannin would do anything to provoke them now, right? Odo, The sort of kind of feminine voice of Orochimaru started as he had just gotten a report of the Hollow 4 from Danzo. This might be interesting after all. Well, it was bound to happen one way or another. Chapter 10 Ideas. Akatsuki Hideout. Pain was not happy. Not one bit. Zetsu had just returned after losing the Hollow 4 and the Jinchuriki at the same time. He reported seeing them in Yuzu's ruins, then they just vanished without a single trace. The fact that they killed Haiden was one thing, but to completely evade the spy master of the Akatsuki was another entirely. Pain had no idea who these four were or just how strong they were, and that was a major disadvantage to any other hidden village in the elemental lands. He would have to tread carefully from here on out. If one of them could kill Haiden without much effort, then who knows what all four of them could do when serious. "Are you alright, Pain?" a feminine voice spoke from behind the man. Pain turned to see his closest ally, Conan, approach him with a wary eye. He turned back around as he looked out a window to the rainy countryside. It is the Hollow 4. He began with an irritated undertone. "Not only have they taken 4 jinchuriki from us, but they have also eluded us once more." Conan sighed as she had known that those 4 were causing her once friend so much headache. She looked back towards him and asked in a calm tone, "So what do we do?" Pain scowled out the window in response. "When I confront them, they will know that they should never have defied a god." Conan looked down in disappointment, as she knew that he was too far gone at this point. New Yuzu. Right now in a large dining hall, a celebration was being held for the return of the lost heir to the Uzumaki clan. Everyone from the village was there as they had prepared a massive feast for not only the returning Naruto, but his team and guests as well. The night was filled with amazing food, a lot of hilarious entertainment from some of the oddballs of the clan, and an all-around joyous time in general. Naruto sat next to Mito as she drank her own personal sake and enjoyed not having to work on paperwork for once this month. Hinata and Sakura were seated away from them and actually having a decent conversation with some of the people there. Haku had joined in on the fun, chasing children in a game of tag. The jinchuriki were also enjoying the festivities as they ate and talked to others. Mito, finishing up her 3rd bottle of sake, sighed in content before looking towards Naruto. "I seriously can't believe what you've just told me." She spoke in a confused tone for ABIT.So let me get this straight. You and your friends were killed years ago and transported to another world as these powerful beings, died there, then resurrected by Kami to make this world peaceful. Did I get all of that, Naruto? Naruto smirked as he leaned back in his chair. That's the shortened version, yes. Mito sighed as she leaned back in her own chair and looked up to the ceiling. Damn. I couldn't think this family of ours could have any more strange things happen to it. Naruto raised a brow. What do you mean? Mito sighed again and looked back to him with a partially serious look. I'm gonna assume that you've noticed the genjutsu I'm using, right? When she saw him nod, she continued. The thing is, this genjutsu can only be used by Uzumakis by blood, meaning that anyone else who tries this will simply age faster, but it also has an odd side effect. What's that? Naruto asked her as he narrowed his eyes a bit. The user seems to stop aging entirely. Mito spoke with a downward look in her eyes. That explains how you're still here then. Naruto spoke out, getting her attention. You used this jutsu to put yourself back in your prime when Yuzu was invaded. You did it to protect your family and eventually retreat with them. Mito smirked. Smart. Definitely didn't get that from Kushina. The two chuckled a bit as they downed some more sake as the night continued on. As the party was drawing near an end, Mito brought Naruto and his allies with her to her office to discuss what they were going to do now. Right now, our goal is to liberate the current jinchuriki. Sakura spoke in her stoic tone. Well, from what I've heard, Kumo treats its jinchuriki nicely and fairly, Mito said as she propped her arms on her new desk. Aside from them, there's also the one-tailed jinchuriki being unstable due to his seal, the 3 tails dead now, and the 6 tails is missing. You're well informed. Hinata spoke with a narrowed eye. We have our own spies all around some of the major villages, Mito answered, unfazed by Hinata's glare. Aside from the traitorous Konoha, we have eyes and ears almost everywhere. That explains how you knew of the 4 of us so easily. Naruto started. Be that as it may, we're going to need a place to lay low and bring other jinchuriki to so we can start the next step. You're welcome to stay here and so are your allies and the jinchuriki. Mito spoke with a smirk. But know that if they cause any trouble, they are in a village filled with seal masters of the highest caliber. So I suggest you make sure things don't go south so fast, Naruto. Naruto nodded as he and the others left the office to find a home for now. Before they left though, Mito stopped them with her next words. If you're gonna go and get other jinchuriki, then I know the one tail is going to be in the Chunin exams held in Konoha next week. The 4 stopped and looked back to her as she smiled at them. Just fruit for though, Konoha. Right now, Sasuke was training with Kakashi and Danzo like a madman. He needed to get stronger not just to kill his brother now, but to defeat the Hollow 4 and take their power for himself. His arrogance was on full display as Kakashi was teaching him even more fire-based jutsu, and even his prized Chidori technique. It wasn't all that hard for Sasuke as he just watched what Kakashi and Danzo did and copied them into his repertoire. While this was going on, none were aware of a small snake watching everything with great interest. Orochimaru was fully prepared for what was to come in the Chunin exams and attaining the young Uchiha's body, but he was also interested in the Hollow Four. If he could find and convince them to join him in destroying Konoha with him, then maybe even taking a body or two for later on. Oh, the possibilities were endless if everything went his way. Despite how IWA felt about the Four, and their need to destroy them for taking their jinchuriki, Orochimaru still wanted the Four to join him. As the training session ended, Sasuke left the area to return home, excited and smug at the fact that he was given permission to participate in the Chunin exams. He was so full of himself that when he made it to his home, he didn't even notice the pair of red, Sharingan eyes watching him from afar. "I can't believe you," a feminine voice whispered out as they disappeared from the shadows. Chapter 11, Arrival. A week later, Konoha. As much as Hiruzen didn't like it, it was now time for the Chunin exams to be held in Konoha. It has been a very odd and somewhat dangerous time now for the exams to go on, mainly because of which villages were participating within it. It would definitely be a year no one would forget. This time around, participating within the exams is Konoha's allied village of Suna, with the team being the infamous Sand siblings. It is already known to Hiruzen of who they were. The Kazekage's children were very easy to distinguish. There was Temari, the blonde wind mistress, Kankuro, the puppet master with an odd obsession with war paint, and then there was the Ichibi Jinchuriki, Gaara. If what the reports say are true about that one, then Hiruzen would need to be extra careful this time around. Also participating were a team from Grass with an eerily familiar presence behind them, a group from Oto that kept close to Grass as they entered through the gates, a group from Kumo of all places that allegedly had the two-tailed Jinchuriki with them, and even to the old man's surprise a group from IWA. Despite how IWA felt towards Konoha and especially the Yellow Flash, they relented and reluctantly joined in the exams. Their group had the Tsuchikage's granddaughter with them, meaning that this would be a very interesting exam indeed. Some other various groups from all over joined in, none of which were that noteworthy or a threat to Konoha as a whole, though there was one group that seemed odd to the aged Kage. This group was only a single genin team with their sensei, but it was how they looked like and their headband symbol that caught his attention. The first genin was a girl no older than 12 from the looks of her, but she was developing quite well. She stood fairly tall and had heart-shaped face. Her eyes were a deep gray while her short and spiky red hair marred the right side of her head. She was wearing a black and red battle kimono that provided her with mobility, as well as flexibility, with black leggings and sandals on. She was carrying no visible weapon on her though, and that was a bit of cause for concern. Her headband was tied over her forehead. The next genin to enter was another girl with her arms behind her head. She looked about 12, maybe 13, also with a developing body as well. She was a lot more scruffy looking than the first girl though, both in her demeanor and her appearance. She had bright green eyes and had her bright red hair tied up in a topknot. Her face had a scar going down her left cheek and down to below her chin. She was wearing an all-black shirt with dark red pants and black sandals on, and her headband was around her slim waist. She was also not carrying any weapon. The last was a short boy that was just looking around with a smirk on his face, looking no older than 10. He had a deep blue eyes and short red hair that was to his shoulders. There really wasn't anything all that special about his face aside from his eyes, but his clothes seemed the most different from the girls'. Instead of black or red, he wore a blue shirt with the kanji for water on the back and what looked like white cargo shorts with multiple pockets on each leg. He wore white sandals as well and was also not carrying a weapon on him. His headband was wrapped around his neck. Their sensei was a tall, muscular woman with fair skin, long and smooth red hair and almost black eyes. She wore a jounin vest under a black battle kimono with red streaks going along the sides and the hem. She also wore black leggings much like the first girl and had on standard sandals. The woman had a look of wonder and awe as she looked around the village with her genin squad, but much like those three, she also had no visible weapons on her person. Her headband was tied around her neck. Hiruzen looked to the 4 new people entering the village with a bit of worry in his old eyes. He saw the symbol on their headbands and his worry grew even more. On the headbands was the symbol of the Leaf Village, but it was just a swirl and nothing else. Also, instead of it being a metal plate on a blue cloth, the plate was black with the symbol being etched in red and the cloth in a crimson color. Just who are these 4 exactly? Hiruzen said more to himself than anything as he watched from his tower as every other team was getting to their own places for the exams. With the 3 genin and their sensei were walking along the streets of Konoha as they were mainly sightseeing at first. The jounin sensei was actually pretty excited about being here, as was the boy, as they were looking all over the place. The 2 girls on the other hand were simply looking at the various areas with a little less enthusiasm, especially the second girl. They split up after checking into the hotel with the first girl and boy going off in one direction, while the second girl and the woman went in another. With the first girl and the boy, they had went into the marketplace where various things were being sold. The boy was very excited as he had never seen this many merchant areas before in his life, while the girl was just looking around with her hands behind her back. Can you believe this, Sano? The boy started as he looked to the now named Sano. We're actually participating to be Chunin now in another village. Isn't it exciting? Sano smiled to him as she nodded. Yep. That it is aim. Sano looked around as she saw some of the other participants in this year's Chunin exams. One of them noticed her and gave off a pretty sinister grin to her. What's wrong, Sano? Aim asked his teammate and friend. Sano turned away from the grass Neen and kept on walking. Nothing too important, Aim. Let's get something to eat. Aim nodded and the two proceeded to head out, completely unaware that the grass Neen was watching them as they left with mild interest. Back with the other two, the girl and her sensei were walking along the streets near a few buildings and gated areas. The woman was all smiles while her student still had her hands behind her head and a bored expression on her face. The girl yawned, catching her sensei's attention. Oh, are you tired already, Noya? She asked in a merry tone. Noya ched and simply walked on. This place is pretty boring, Takara-sensei. She continued to walk on as Takara simply smiled at her and kept up. They don't even have decent defenses. Any competent ninja could easily sneak into this place. I wouldn't go that far, Noya. Takara spoke up as she looked over to one of the trees with the same smile still on her face. Noya sighed as she had already known about the person following them. Quick as a flash, Noya turned towards the tree and threw a kunai at the unfortunate spying ninja. Before the kunai could get too close, the figure leapt out of the tree followed by two others to reveal Sasuke and his two teammates. He was wearing a more umbu-looking outfit with all black clothing and some armor on. He smirked at the girl when he held her kunai in between his fingers on his right hand. Seems like you need to learn a little lesson since you think the ninja in the village are weak. He spoke, his voice filled with arrogance. Maybe if you beg me and become my personal pet, I'll go easy on you during the exams. Maybe. Takara did a bit of a gasp at the statement. A very odd predicament you've gotten yourself in, Noya. What will you do now? Noya looked to the Uchiha still smirking towards her, and grinned. Easy, sensei. She raised her right hand and grabbed at something in the air. Sasuke and his two squad mates stayed relaxed as they didn't expect much from some random genin from a no-named village. That all changed after she did this. She tugged hard and the kunai in Sasuke's hand exploded in a small burst of fire. Sasuke quickly dropped the kunai before any serious damage could be done to him and backed away briefly, as did Sai and the other root member. Sasuke had only a minor burn on his hand, nothing serious of the sort. He looked up and scowled at Noya's smug grin as she yanked her arm back and the kunai retracted to her hand where it disappeared in an instant. Next time when we meet Uchiha, Noya started as she turned around and waved to him. I won't be going easy on ya. As Noya was leaving, Takara simply looked to the Konoha genin and shrugged. Well then, good luck when you all begin the exams. And just like that, the jounin left to catch up with her, left the Uchiha fuming but did notice that they were being watched by a certain, red-haired Suna Jinchuriki. So, that's the one that Naruto and the others want, she said to herself in a serious tone. Seems that his seal is a real piece of shit. I'll have to find a castrate the one responsible for disrespecting the good name of sealing, she said to herself in a sweet tone this time as she caught up with Noya. Oh yeah, this year's exams would be something to remember indeed. Chapter 12, Exams, where we left off. While Noya and Takara dealt with the Uchiha's ego and spotting their target, both Aim and Sano had reached the greatest place on earth. At least in their opinions. Ichiraku Ramen. The second the two stepped foot inside the stand, the glorious smells of Kami's gift to the world hit them like a powerful wind jutsu. The two stood there for a second simply basking in the smell until the teenage girl behind the counter noticed them. Saw the two ninja from another village standing there with a mixture of joy and sweet relief on their faces and couldn't help but chuckle under her breath a bit. Ahem, she started, getting their attention as she smiled warmly towards them. Would you two like something to eat? The response was immediate as both Aim and Sano went to the counter and began to order an obscene amount of bowls of ramen. Ayam and her father Tuchi were surprised that the two ordered so many bowls, not to mention ate them all with the greatest of ease. It reminded them of a certain blonde that would do the same thing. Fortunately, because they were so used to working fast with Naruto back then, they could keep up with all of the orders the two unknown nin were making. At the end of it all, a total of 60 bowls of different flavors of ramen were eaten by the two. Both Aim and Sano leaned back in their chairs as they sighed in satisfaction at the amazing meal they had just had. To them, this was the best place on earth. The Ichirakus were more than a little shocked at the duo for eating this much. but knew at least that this would be a good payday for them. That was very delicious, Tucci. Aim spoke up as he took out a scroll from one of his pockets and handed it to the man. This should cover the food, and a little something from an old friend of yours. The two ramen cooks looked to the boy with confusion in their eyes, but Tucci took the scroll nonetheless. Both Sano and Aim bowed to the two and thanked them for the food before leaving to prepare for the exams. Tucci shrugged at what the boy meant and unfurled the scroll as 7 stacks of Ryo appeared in a puff of smoke. Both Tucci and Ayam were starstruck by what they saw, as this could all pay for the 60 bowls and then some. But then they noticed a letter in one of the stacks. Taking the paper out, they read what was on it, and were absolutely shocked by what it said. Dear Ichirakus, by the time when you read this, both Aim and Sano would have already left. It's been a long time since I've seen you two, and I wanted to thank you both for all the kindness you showed me when I was younger. I know this might be a little much for the food I always ate from you guys, but I hope it makes up for it all. I'm doing just fine right now as I am with my family, and we plan on doing something drastic in the coming months. Don't worry about me, as no one will be able to hurt me ever again. Thank you both for everything. Naruto Uzumaki/starrk. Both the Ichirakus were stunned to read this, as they had long thought that their favorite customer was gone forever. It seems that he was doing just fine and even had a family to boot. That brought Ayam to joyful tears and for Tucci to smile at the thought of the boy finally achieving happiness. The next day, as the genin hopefuls make their way to the academy with their respective senseis, we find the 3 from the unknown village making their way inside with only a few glares thrown their way from the people of Konoha. The reason for those glares was that word got out of one of them damaging the last Uchiha yesterday. The civilian council tried to have the group arrested for assault, and then figure out where their village is to find the people heavily. Fortunately, Hirozen dissuaded them in saying that would have a horrible impression on the potential clients if the village finds other villages based off of moderate altercations. The council did relent, but they asked for one of Danzo's route to watch the group heavily, a request the old warhawk was all too happy to allow for potential new members of his program, not to mention the fact that he also knew nothing about the village these 3 genin and their jounin came from either, meaning that they were an unnecessary inconvenience in his way. No matter. The 3 genin made their way to the entrance of the academy, where it was Aim that tilted his head in confusion. Their academy is super small compared to ours. Yeah, I guess it is, Noya answered in a bored tone as she yawned, earning a few more heated glares her way. Sano looked around for a second as she was smiling at the prospect of facing strong ninja from another village for the first time. That was when a new voice came rushing towards the 3 as they made their way into a larger room with stairs near the wall. Excuse me. The voice spoke in a confident but respectful way. The 3 turned to see a young boy with a green spandex suit on, a bowl haircut, wrappings around his hands and determined look in his eyes. That was when they noticed his eyebrows and Noya burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. What's with those eyebrows? Ha 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 ha. Aim raised an eyebrow as he had never seen anything like that on a person before. Sano had a smile on her face while really she was also trying not to laugh. The teen in front of them then composed himself as he ignored Noya's laughter to accomplish what he came here to do. I am Rock Lee, and I wish to challenge the one who defeated Sasuke Uchiha yesterday. He spoke in a loud tone that got the team's attention. Noya stopped laughing as she stepped up with an almost feral grin to her face. Oh. So you wanna fight me, huh? Lee narrowed his eyes as he got into his own stance. If you are the one who defeated the Uchiha, then yes, I would like to. Noya's grin grew as she could tell this guy was more of a challenge than the other guy from yesterday, though she didn't get why bushy brows over here thought she defeated him. Embarrassed him, yes. Defeated him, not yet. Oh well, in her opinion, as she got into her own stance Lee had never seen before. She was low to the ground, almost crouching really. Her right leg was bent the lowest where her knee was almost touching the ground, her left leg forward and her arms bent at the elbows with her right fist clenched and the left opened. All in all, Lee was confused by this particular stance as he had never seen anyone take a stance like this. Noya continued to grin at him, and made a come here motion with her open left hand. Lee decided to take an exception to the gesture, and decided to rush in to end this quickly. Within the span of a single second, Noya pounced and struck Lee dead in the chest with her right knee at speeds even the taijutsu expert couldn't even track. Lee was pushed back by the force of her strike and landed in a heap a little ways away from her. Noya landed in a real crouch this time and stood up to look at the teen with a disappointed eye. All that bravado and you go down at the first strike? She put her hands in her pockets and turned to go to the stairs, followed by her teammates. If that's your best bushy brows, then don't come at me again until you get some real skill. Lee was clutching his chest as the pain was sudden and sharp for a time. He watched as 10-10, his teammate, came to him with a concerned look to her face. Niji had seen what had happened to his teammate and didn't like this one bit. He watched as the team from an unknown proceeded up the stairs, not caring about what had just happened, and decided right then and there that it was his fate to defeat them all. In the shadows, though, was a pair of Sharingan eyes that watched the one-sided fight with mild irritation. He expected for that girl to show more of her style so he could have it, but only one move wasn't enough for him. Despite all of that, at least he knows that she's fast. That would help for when he brings that bitch down where she belongs to an Uchiha elite. Outside of the real test room, the team felt insulted by the super weak genjutsu that was on the second floor. Aim shook his head as he knew that the ones who failed that part of the exams has it coming if they couldn't figure out the easiest illusion ever. Oh well, in his opinion, they made their way to the entrance and went inside, immediately being hit by killer intent sent their way. The mass group of genin from different villages tried to intimidate any young ninja prospect that dared to try and get the better of any of them. What they were not expecting was for one of the three to let out a subtle chuckle that turned into a full-blown sinister laugh. Noya covered her eyes as she couldn't help herself at the weak display of power these genin had. Was the gap really that large between the genin of her village and the genin of others? She really couldn't tell, nor did she really care. Aim was wondering why exactly all these guys were doing this with such weak power. This was nothing compared to who they've trained with in the past. Hell, when they met the Hollow Four for the first time, Aim actually passed out from the sheer power they exuded. All of this right now, though, this felt like nothing really. Sano was all smiles as she decided to have a little fun herself and unleash some of her own killer intent. The pressure dialed up and the genin quickly dispersed as they felt her power, even though it was incredibly, chillingly calm. Noya stopped her laughing fit as she looked towards Sano and Aim. Man, I needed that laugh. After the genin left them alone, Sano relaxed her killer intent and the three decided to go about this exam as proficiently as possible. Though they were aware of the numerous stares they received, one such stare was noticed by Aim. He saw the white-haired, glasses-wearing genin and knew that was his intended target for later. Forest of Death. As the written exams were about to begin, four shadows appeared on a thick branch high above overlooking most of the land. They were dressed in white cloaks with their hoods up and masks on as they stood there, waiting. Soon enough, Stark began as he laid down and got into a relaxed position. The girls watched him aside from Ulquiorra, who was focused on the objective at hand. Things will be getting a whole lot more interesting. Chapter 13 Forest. After the exam, the remaining genin were following the new proctor of the next part of the exam towards the Forest of Death. She was definitely a weird one as she had busted through the window and had a large banner introducing herself as sexy and single. Noya laughed at her entrance while Sano shook her head and Aim simply didn't pay her much attention as he kept a subtle eye on his target. Speaking of targets, Kabuto noticed the occasional looks that the new kid was giving him. He tried using his cards on him and his teammates before the exam started as per the request of Sasuke Uchiha, but nothing appeared aside from their first names and nothing else. Anyway, after the majority of the teams failed the written part, the remaining genin followed Anko to the forest for the second part of the exams. For most, the Forest of Death was definitely a terrifying sight to see. The odd animal screeches, the ominous feel behind the metal gates, the obvious signs that say to not enter, all of this playing into the general creepiness of the entire place. Anko then went on to discuss the rules of this part of the test, and that anyone was fair game. Some within the group saw this as a golden opportunity. One for personal revenge, that being Sasuke to Noya for humiliating him the other day. One to figure out why he was being watched earlier, that being Kabuto. One just to kill any and everything in his way without any precautions, that being Gaara. And one to leave his mark on a certain genin. While she was speaking, Sano and Noya were looking above them in the forest, seeing a brief glimpse of white above before it disappeared. They knew what their orders were by the Hollow Four and knew that if things went wrong, the signal would be lit. Aim saw his target once again, and this time noticed that Kabuto smirked right at him from the corner of his eye. Aim sighed out as his task would be very annoying in his opinion, but he had his own orders and would follow them to the letter. Alright then. Anko spoke up once more after explaining the rules. Now that is all done with, I'm gonna need you all to sign these waivers. She motioned to a large table with stacks of papers on it. One genin from Grass decided to ask the obvious. What are those for? Anko gave a sadistic grin that sent shivers down some of the genin's spines. These are agreement papers that say that Konoha is not responsible for any deaths during this part of the exam. She continued to grin as everyone started to sign the papers rather nervously. Once they were all signed, she looked to them all. Have fun, and try not to die, she said in an almost sing-song-like voice. Every genin team went to their assigned areas and waited for the horn to be sounded to signify the beginning of basically a war game. The Uzumaki team received a heaven scroll but paid it no attention as they had their own jobs to do. For Noya, her task was to test out the skills of the rest of the Konoha genin. She was given this task by Naruto as he wanted to see if any of them had gotten stronger over the past few years that he, Sakura and Hinata had been dead. Noya was excited to a point as she already defeated 2 without much trouble and was itching for some real competition now. Sano was tasked with finding the jinchuriki of Suna and taking him away with her. It was easy to figure out which one he was as the Uzumaki spy network was able to locate the boy with ease and give the teen a detailed description of him and his abilities with his sand. This gave Sano all the information she needed to provide countermeasures for the redhead boy, though she did wish to see his seal and figure out what's wrong with it. As a seal expert herself, though not as strong as the masters in her village, she could just tell that the boy's seal was horribly placed. Aim's task was to find and eliminate the one called Kabuto as it was revealed that he works for the snake Sannin, Orochimaru. Despite his appearance, Aim was actually the most well-versed of the 3 when it came to dismantling and disabling the human body. He studied relentlessly on how to shut down certain aspects of a person with only a few strikes, almost like the Hyuga clan. Only his were designed to kill moreover than anything. If Kabuto was here in the exams working for Orochimaru, then that means that Naruto's assumption was right and the snake was here indeed. Aim would have to tread lightly for this one. As soon as the alarm blared for the genin to proceed, the 3 teens disappeared in a swirl of black leaves for Noya, fire for Sano, and water for Aim. This surprised the few Chunin guards that saw them do this and wondered just who these kids were and where they came from. With the Jounin senseis, as every Jounin inside the room watched as the genin ran, or in the Suna team's case walk, into the forest, everyone watched the real oddity team disappear in a different form of shunshin. What in the hell? One of the instructors from IWA spoke up in a shocked tone, causing everyone else to question who those 3 were. How do genin already know how to use shunshin this early? Kurenai, the genjutsu mistress of Konoha, asked mainly to her comrades. No idea. Asuma started as he turned to see Takara standing idly by, watching everything going about on the screens. Perhaps we should ask her. He nodded over toward her as the other Konoha senseis looked over. As they watched her, they noticed that she was all smiles the entire time. Like she was simply overjoyed about something they didn't know. It was slightly unnerving to the Konoha Jounin in the room and even some of the ones from other villages as well. Kakashi decided to be the one to demand an explanation. He marched up to her with an intimidating glare as he spoke. What exactly have you teaching those genin of yours? His voice was all serious as he did not want his prized student to have an unexpected run-in with any of these 3. Takara turned to him, completely unfazed by his glare. I simply taught them how to be real ninja. The look she gave as she said those words were slightly annoying to the one-eyed. Yoni and I in our village, children are taught from a very young age to defend themselves and fight. We teach them taijutsu at age 4, then gradually move to genjutsu at age 6, ninjutsu at our 8, and fuinjutsu at age 10. After that, they learn whatever else they wish to focus on their own. Simple really. And what about their childhoods? Kurenai spoke up next, outraged that they stat their kids at such a young age. You're making them ninja too early in their lives. Takara simply smiled at the genjutsu mistress as she continued. That is the way of our village, so we can never suffer like we have in the past to the ones we once trusted. Her smile turned into a hard scowl that caught the Konoha crew off guard. She walked out of the room without another word. Kakashi was seething as he raced out to confront her and demand a real explanation only to find that she was gone. What the hell, he said to himself. He would definitely have to go to Danzo-san and inform him of this woman and her genin. Back with the exam, the 3 Uzumakis landed in a clearing not too far away from the gates and stood for a moment. It was Sano that spoke up. We all have our tasks. Let's get them done. That was all she said before they all nodded and left the area in their own shunshin once again. With Aim, Kabuto had been traveling the forest by the tree branches with his team as planned by their leader Orochimaru. The snake Sannin's instructions were to not engage any of the Konoha nin and simply take the appropriate scroll to continue onward. Everything else would be done by Dosa's team and himself. Kabuto agreed to the instructions but still had an odd feeling about that boy that stared him down earlier. It made Kabuto uneasy, especially when he couldn't find any information on the boy or his team. Just who were they, and what was their purpose for being here in the first place? Too many unknowns for the teen. His thoughts were cut short when a large torrent of water came rushing towards him and his team. They all jumped out of the way in different directions. Bad idea. One of the members of the team landed on another branch far off from the others. Who in the hell did that? He didn't have enough time to wonder, as he was imprisoned in a water ball. He tries to break out using his own weapons and trying to steal the chakra within it, but he was shocked to learn that he couldn't move. Some of the water had tied onto his limbs, forcing him immobile. The other member of the squad landed on the side of a tree, and was looking for his teammates. That was when he noticed a figure standing in front of him. "Who do you think you are attacking us?" he yelled out as he pulled a kunai out and rushed the shadowed figure. As he approached, ready to end this person's life, he noticed that they weren't moving at all. Stopping just before delivering a killing blow, he noticed that it was actually a mass of water in the shape of a person's body. "Don!" A voice spoke from above him. The sound Nin looked up to see that boy Kabuto was worried over standing upside down on a branch. "I was hoping you would run into it to make things easier." He shrugged. "Oh well." The mass of water came alive and quickly imprisoned him inside like his other teammate before he could even say anything. "Now, time for the real target." Aim spoke before hearing something. "Looking for me." Kabuto spoke from behind the Uzumaki and struck him in the back with a chakra scalpel. He smirked as the boy fell from the tree branch and down to the earth below. "I should have known you were going to come after me, but this was almost too easy to put into words." He smirked as the boy hit the ground hard and kicked up dust. "Now, to take you back to Orochimaru-sama to see just what you know." He leapt off the branch and landed near the crater as the dust was clearing, but his smirk vanished as he saw that there was no one there except a puddle of water. "What? I will give you this." Aim's voice was heard from behind as Kabuto turned to see the boy leaning on a tree with a smirk. "You're good at stealth, and any regular genin to even Chunin would have been dead from that strike." He stood straight and narrowed his eyes to the silver-haired teen. Kabuto got into a ready stance, chakra scalpel at the ready. "But I've been trained by people who know how to mask everything from their opponent to ensure victory. The sounds of their feet to the ground, their breathing, their scent, even their own heartbeat." Aim held his hands close together. "You know only one. And that's why you failed." Kabuto Yakushi. "So you know me then?" Kabuto tried to keep up appearances and maybe get some more information out of this boy. "If you don't mind me asking, since you know my name, what's yours?" Aim shook his head. "Sorry, but you nor Orochimaru will get to know that." Kabuto's eyes widened as somehow this brat knew about his leader. Now all bets were off as he charged at the boy with his real speed, easily reaching Jounin levels. As he reached his arm out to strike the boy's chest and end him, Aim had already went through one hand seal. Just then, Kabuto froze in place mere millimeters from making impact. What?" he said, trough gritted teeth. "Did you know that various parts of the human body contain water?" Kabuto-san? Aim asked as he backed away. It varies for each, like the skin containing 64%. He did another hand seal and Kabuto's skin started feel like it was boiling to him. Muscles and kidneys contained 79%. He did another seal and Kabuto began to scream as his muscles started tearing themselves apart and reforming again thanks to his regeneration. Lungs are about 83%. Another seal and Kabuto began to choke on something he was no sure what. Even bones have at least 31% in them. Another seal and Kabuto's bones began to break in various places as he screamed at the top of his lungs in pain. High above in the trees watching everything transpire was Sakura wearing her mask and outfit. She was only there to observe collect after everything was done, but even she was impressed at the boy's abilities with water jutsu and seals. Apparently when he was young his abilities to use water were unmatched to anyone. The only one now who exceeded his skills was Hinata. Back down below, Kabuto was in a world of pain as his body kept getting torn apart and put back together again. He had kept on drowning and having his kidneys destroyed each time along with torn muscles and bones breaking at various angles, yet he was still conscious and glaring at the boy through gritted teeth. And finally, Aim spoke with a small smirk on his face. "Did you know the human brain and hair are composed of 73% of water?" Kabuto went wide-eyed at those words and watched in horror as the boy did one last seal. That was when his brain and heart simply exploded within themselves, leaving the teen lifeless on the ground. Aim breathed out as he undid his jutsu and immediately collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Right as he fell, Sakura caught him in her arms. "Impressive," she spoke through her mask despite the boy being knocked out. She flung him over her shoulder before going to Kabuto's body. She grabbed it by the back of the neck before getting ready to leave. "Stop right there," a voice yelled out to her. She turned to see both of Kabuto's teammates staring her down, ready for a fight. Sakura didn't pay them any attention and turned to leave once more. That was when one of them threw a kunai at the back of her head. She didn't bother to dodge or even stop it as the metal object simply bounced off of the back of her head. The two were shocked by what they saw and even more so when she disappeared altogether. Next thing they know, their head were removed from their bodies altogether. "Fools," Sakura spoke as she left the area completely with both Aim and Kabuto in a sonido. This was only the start of what was to come later. What if Naruto is Coyote Stark harem? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.